from an amateur kitchen table organisation to a professionally staffed donor agency. We do exemplary due diligence on our partners. We monitor and measure our impact, and we know exactly where every penny goes. There was a time not so long ago that we were rated in need of urgent improvement by internal audit. We now have a perfect score, and we do it on 4% overheads, which is around half the international average. I have delivered on every single one of my ministerial pledges for 2023, and we're a long way towards delivering all the objectives we set out in our 5-year strategy published in 2022. And what's more, this has been achieved from a backdrop of the JOA workplace, which is now the highest rated government body in the island, as we score 896 out of 1,000 for employee satisfaction, compared to a state's average of 631, a rating described as world-class. If you elect me to finish my term, I will do exactly what I promised when I stood here in June 2022. Working with my fellow commissioners, I will expand our impact, promote our island identity, and increase Jersey's reputation in a very good way around the world. Thank you, Ma'am.
Thank you, Deputy Labby. There now follows up to 20 minutes of questioning. And first on my list, I have Deputy Howell.
Thank you, Ma'am. Please could the candidate explain to all islanders why Jersey should give overseas aid? Thank you, Ma'am.
Thank you. Jersey is a wealthy jurisdiction, and back in 1970, the wealthy jurisdictions around the world made a commitment to the poorer countries that they would help and support them. The obvious goal was 0.7% of GDP. We haven't achieved that, but we are slowly working towards it. We have managed to fix our budget to GDP. So when the economy grows, our budget grows with it, and likewise, if our economy shrinks, so does our budget. But it is a long-standing commitment to assist the world's poor. Thank you.
Supplementary, Deputy Howell. Deputy Jeune.
Thank you, Ma'am. JOA's current strategy talks about focusing on upstreaming to contribute to systemic long-term change. What types of programmes or projects has JOA moved to since adopting the strategy that contributes to more systemic change?
We believe the thematic programmes that we've chosen lead to that. All our programmes are sustainable. They are no longer a scattergun approach, and we do them with the hope that one day that we don't have to do them, so that we ensure that all our programmes are sustainable.
Supplementary, Deputy.
Yes, thank you. In light of criticism within the international development community surrounding white saviorism and concerns about perpetuating a form of colonialisation in international development, how does JOA actively involve and prioritise the voices, concerns and decisions of local communities in the countries it has prioritised?
We work with the communities. We like to feel that we don't go in there and impose things on a community. We always work with the communities themselves in the hope that we eventually work with the governments of those countries. We don't give any money. We're not a bilateral donor. We don't give our monies to governments. We work with the communities that we are supporting.
Deputy Joseph.
Ma'am, thank you. The candidate minister said if she's elected, well, she's going to be the minister, so we can ask positive questions. And I have not got a declaration of interest having worked for JOAC, but many of the issues that she raised in her brilliant speech, if I may say, having improved JOA to the late she has, I can absolutely recognise that, absolutely. What she didn't, and maybe she could help us in her answers, ma'am, is she's going to be the International Development Minister with all of those controls in JOAC, which she spoke so splendidly spoken about. But the other thing that I recall her in the last government and the previous government was she was also a passionate advocate of working with external relations about the Jersey identity. And is she going to take that same driving zeal about the Jersey Identity project and work? And how will she work with her new colleague, who won't be me, but work with the External Relations Minister to develop that Jersey identity around the world, which is not just about financial services?
Indeed, it isn't. I'd like to thank the Deputy for his complimentary comments. I would very much like to pursue the Island Identity Project and have it filter down to, through many departments. I've been doing my best to get them to recognise the importance of it. But certainly there is a lot of synergy with the External Relations Department. Some ideas or some recommendations that we had in the Island Identity document, the original document, was to set up the Jersey diaspora, the networking globally that could assist Jersey in many ways, and it could assist Jersey people living abroad and help them in whatever way we can. We have ideas about putting out a newsletter so more people are informed about what we're doing, and we can keep in contact with, as I say, with the diaspora. Also, with ambassadors, we'd like to promote anyone to be Jersey's ambassador, whether that be frontline staff in hospitality, whether that be business people representing the island abroad. We'd like to give them the basic knowledge about our constitution and what we're about so they can be our ambassadors. Yes, there's lots of work to be done, but a lot with external relations as well.
Supplementary, Deputy Joseph.
Je pourrais demander la question de supplémentaire en français, but I can't because it would be unfair to most states members. Does the Minister designate agree that the work of external relations is more than just simply talking to Conservative Party, the current Labour Party in the UK, that it's actually more about that? And does she see herself, and what would her recommendations be to the new government, which is going to be incoming, about the scale of opportunities? We see the tectonic plates of the world changing with elections in the UK, US, across the Europe. How does she plan to advance the interests of those issues which she's so clearly explained?
I always felt post-Brexit, Jersey has got to carve its own way in the world. We can't just rely on Whitehall or Brussels. We have got to stand our own. The Jersey Overseas Aid programmes and the themes that we've chosen, drawing on Jersey's expertise in dairy, financial inclusion and conservation, we feel promote these as well as offering expertise and bringing value to our programmes. But certainly in Africa, Jersey is known for the Jersey cow. In Madagascar, we're known for our work in conservation with the work that we do with Durrell there. And I'm proud that Jersey, we have enormous financial services industry over here, of course we do, but I think it's good that we're not only servicing wealthy people, we are now servicing the poor with our financial inclusion programs across the world.
Constable of St Saviour.
Thank you, Ma'am. The Minister mentioned earlier several countries, quite a few of which are either in or very close to, shall we say, conflict zones. We all know what's happening with Ukraine. obviously Israel, Gaza, and obviously problems in the Red Sea now. Does this complicate matters for the Minister to get emergency aid through to where it's very badly needed?
Well, it's always complicated getting aid to troubled areas, and that's why we use partners on the ground that we're used to working with. We feel that they have extensive experience in working in troubled areas, that they are our eyes and ears on the ground, and they know when it's appropriate to take aid in, what is needed, and they feed that back to us. But it's a very hard task they've got, and obviously some areas are worse than others. But the emergency humanitarian aid is different to our sustainable projects.
Supplementary on the top.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, the Minister mentioned working with local agencies, but is the Minister also working with organisations like Red Cross, Red Crescent, UNHCR, and just supplying them with money to get aid through where it's needed?
Yes, absolutely. As I alluded to in my speech, we do huge amounts of due diligence on our partners, and the ones he mentioned, Red Cross, Red Crescent, UN, Save the Children, other organisations. It would depend which areas, wherever there is an emergency. Some of the bigger agencies work better in different jurisdictions. So we have about 10 of the larger agencies on our books, so to speak, and we choose the ones that are most suited in a particular jurisdiction.
Deputy Miles.
Thank you, Ma'am. There are unprecedented amounts of humanitarian crises going on around the world. How does JOA prioritise which crises to support, and how do they measure the impact that that support has on vulnerable communities?
We get, as I said, we work with about 10 large agencies who focus on humanitarian crises, and they report back to us about the needs and what they feel is required. The officers assess all the requests we get and come forward to the Commission with recommendations, and ultimately it is the 6 commissioners that make a decision as to which communities we support and what we should be giving them and how much.
Supplementary, Deputy Miles.
Yes, please, Ma'am. I think the Deputy has answered how JOA prioritise those crises to support. But the statistics show that 14 crises were funded in 2023 to a total of about 3.5 million. How do small amounts of money split between many crises actually have an impact on local communities?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question, because we split our budget. We allocate about 25% of our budget for humanitarian emergency need at the start of the year. Obviously, as the year goes on, if there are more crises, we can move the budget around. But we have various mechanisms, various ways of funding emergencies. One is with pooled funds. So we've got certain organisations like UN OCHA that we give monies to, and they've got a pool of money, and they will allocate those monies and report back to us where it is. We also, how much, and as I said, the Commission oversees that. We also fund an organisation called START. Now, this was set up to fund smaller emergencies that we don't necessarily hear about on the national TV, and they're not so widely reported on. And that organisation, in fact, one of the persons that set it up has now become a Jersey resident. She's married to a Jerseyman and she lives over here. So we're blessed to have her to advise us. But also that organisation funds the smaller, lesser known emergencies. And obviously we fund the monies direct as well.
Constable St Brallard.
Thank you, Mum. The term international development can be interpreted in a number of different ways, and we know of the work gone into the African continent and indeed Ukraine. But coming further into Europe, how does the Minister propose to relate, shall we say, to the closer Europe, the neighbours we have nearby, whether it be France, Italy, Germany, and the closer countries? What is her policy with regard to those, please?
In order for international aid to be deemed as international aid, it's known as official development assistance, and the OECD countries define which countries are poor countries, and in fact we choose our countries, the ones that we support for our sustainable projects. We choose them by taking the Humanitarian Development Index. We choose the bottom 50 countries on the Humanitarian Development Index and divide that by the Corruption Perception Index squared, and then out of those countries, because we feel that we shouldn't be funding countries with a high corruption index, because obviously I've got to justify the funding to the Jersey taxpayers. So we also pick Anglophile countries because it's quite handy in order to read the reports that we get back. So the countries are on the Humanitarian Development Index, the poorest 50 of the world, and they are the least corrupt. And we feel by going into fewer countries, that's when we can have and achieve the most impact.
Do you have a supplementary comment?
I thank the Minister, and that's very helpful. Could you just expand on where we are with regard to aid in Ukraine, which is probably a humanitarian issue rather than anything else? Thank you.
Well, where we are, it's still an emergency humanitarian need there. Jersey has funded the Ukraine with not only overseas aid monies, but also the Bailiffs Fund, and the generous people of Jersey have donated. We've so far sent £3.4 million worth of aid to the Ukraine. As issues come up, we've still got some funding out there. We're training women in mine sweeping and various other projects, humanitarian projects. So it's an ongoing situation. So I guess the funding will be ongoing, unfortunately.
Deputy Kovac.
Thank you, ma'am. Can the Minister highlight what she thinks were the main achievements in the last 18 months?
I think probably setting our budget so that it increased. When I took over as Minister, the budget was actually going down, which is not a good look for a wealthy island. So 5.5 years ago, we set it so that we connected it to the GDP and set it so that our budget goes up by 0.1% per annum to the end of this government plan. And then hopefully we'll have another debate about it and see what we do. So that, I think, is what was one of my achievements. Sorry, that wasn't in the last 18 months, but it has been going up slowly in the last 18 months as well. So we are more aligned to the OECD average. I think as well, sort of setting the themes. In the last couple of years, we've crafted an aid programme. So in the last 2 years, we are helping 325,000 more people than we were 2 years ago in our projects. Yeah, I can't really think of any more. Sorry.
Do you have a supplementary?
Where does she think she could do better in this term if she continues?
I think everyone can always do better, and you need to keep a broad mind on that and look out for learning opportunities. But probably, and obviously during the pandemic, that was a difficult time for overseas aid, but we used the time to look at our back office stuff, our internal audit and that sort of thing. So now everything is up to speed, and we're very proud of our back office and our staff survey. And now I think probably what we could do better is tell more people about us, tell our stories so that all school children know about what we do, the career opportunities, the public know what we do and can be justly proud of what Jersey achieves.
There's less than 10 seconds on the clock, I'm afraid. So I think that draws to an end the question time. There being no other nominations, and as the speech and period of questions have been completed, I can confirm that Deputy Labby has been selected for appointment as Minister for International Development. Do you wish to make your nomination, Chief Minister Designate for Infrastructure?
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, I do. I'm very pleased to nominate the Connétable St John for the position of Minister for Infrastructure. Thank you.
Is the nomination seconded?
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any other nominations? Very well. There being no other nominations, I call upon the Connétable of St John to make a 10-minute speech.
Thank you, Ma'am. Ma'am, I've given this position a lot of thought prior to allowing my name to go forward. Clearly, it's a diverse portfolio, and perhaps we all need to remember the strapline of the department, keeping the island running. The team is dedicated to making things happen 24 hours a day, 365, or 6 this year, a year. Ma'am, I offer myself for election with nearly 3 years' experience in this Assembly, having been a member of the Public Accounts Committee, the Hospital Review Panel, and GST Review. I've also now had the privilege of being an Assistant Chief Minister and Vice Chair of the State Employment Board. To this role, I would also bring a lot of relevant experience from a variety of senior roles in business and the third sector, including extensive experience in transport and logistics. Whilst I feel I bring a lot to the role, I don't underestimate the amount I will have to learn, and learn quickly. I'd like to pay tribute to Deputy Binet, who I believe has done a good job during his time at Infrastructure, and I would aim to carry on the good work that he has started. I'll try and cover most of the areas in the department. Transport. In my previous life, I've run large fleets. I'm aware of the many challenges and costs associated with this. 8 years ago, I successfully introduced electric vehicles to a fleet, and 4 years ago, renewable diesel. So I'm fully supportive of the department's work in this area. Ma'am, I will work with the new group that has been set up to review operators' licences and move forward. I hope we can get resolution in this area with a light touch approach. Road safety. Well, like most, I'm a car driver. I'm also a bus user, a cyclist and a walker. I wrote an article in 2019 entitled, "Is it time for government to get serious about cycling in Jersey?" I've had the pleasure of attending a couple of local workshops with the Dutch Cycling Embassy, and having attended these workshops, I'm sure there are some quick wins to be had. I will continue the work that has started on reviewing the feasibility of e-scooters, and will look to expand this to review the potential for electric bikes that are unrestricted but would require a licence plate and insurance, as is the case in Switzerland. If we look at the total success story of Lalonde School, who absolutely encourage families to walk and cycle to school, we should be trying to replicate this right across the island. Only last week, I was shocked to receive a report that had been written 2 years ago for my local school in St John. I was shocked because the parish has been working with infrastructure for many years, and we hadn't been made aware of this work, let alone seen the report. We have to be able to make decisions on a more timely manner. Consultations, of course, are important, but we also need to see action. Public transport. I'm a big fan of our current bus operator, Liberty Bus. I think they've done a great job, and I was happy to support the introduction of student bus passes. I'm also a supporter of the Hopper bus. Having utilised the Loop bus for the Island Games in 2015, I'm fully aware of the potential. I believe that we need to do far more to promote this service so as to increase ridership. With 24% of St Helier residents who work in town using their car to get to work, clearly there is room for improvement. In general, as someone who uses the buses, I find the buses to be clean and the drivers to be helpful. And whilst we have an ambitious target to electrify the service, which Liberty Bus has already started to invest in, we shouldn't underestimate the benefits of encouraging people to use the bus, especially against single car occupancy. During this cost of living crisis, it is also worth noting the financial benefits from using the bus, something again that should be promoted. I have long advocated that there should be a circular bus route across the northern parishes, and I'd like to see how this could be achieved, especially now we have the Enid Kenno Centre at Lekenaway. Waste. The solid waste strategy needs to be revised as it is almost 20 years old. Having been involved in the first parish to recycle in 2006, I look at our curbside recycling rates and look at Guernsey with envy. We have to do better, and I'll work with the team and the Connotab to try and achieve this. The La Collette planning issue needs to be resolved to give the industry confidence. Liquid waste, we have seen £15 million identified over the next 2 years to increase capacity. Many of my former colleagues from St John have tried to get increased investment in this area from the outside. I will do my best to convince my colleagues on the Council of Ministers that this is just the start and that we need to invest in our infrastructure on an ongoing basis. The recent Scrutiny Bridging Liquid Waste Review contains some excellent recommendations, and the department need to review those and come back with a response. Stakeholder engagement was one of the key points I found to come through in there. I will look to work with the Environment Minister and explore how we can include grey water in new builds to reduce the amount of water that goes into the system. Sports facilities. I'm aware that Deputy Stephen has done some good work in this area. A town skate park needs to be delivered as soon as possible. Oakfield should start in Q1 this year. There are also exciting plans for the FB, and if we are to be serious about hosting the Island Games again in the future, we will need to secure funding for this. I would like to explore a central booking system to combine infrastructure sports facilities with our school facilities. I had discussed this with the former Chief Executive of Jersey Sport, as it works well in other areas, and I look forward to working with colleagues from education to ensure that our island assets work for all islanders. Property. This is a very large area of the portfolio, and just like our drains, we have underinvested in this asset. I'm told we have some 800 plus properties, ranging from German bunkers to castles, with some 260 described as active buildings, such as offices, schools, etc. The continued issue for property holdings is the widening gap in the condition of the estate and the maintenance funding. And this has been compounded by the ever-increasing requirement for statutory and regulatory compliance. The department finds itself spending greater proportion of the available funds in making the building safe, leaving even less funds for business as usual maintenance, which means we're effectively overseeing a deteriorating estate. We need to take pride in our properties and look at ways of increasing efficiency. We need to take a longer-term view of our estate and work with Treasury on a sustainable funding model that sees our properties retain their value rather than decrease in value due to the lack of maintenance. I will be trying to convince my colleagues on the Council of Ministers that the financial benefits we gain from the new office headquarters are reinvested into our existing property portfolio, either in full or in part. Whilst the department is ahead of its targets in decarbonising its fleet, there's a lot of work to do with the estate. We own some very old buildings. We are sat in one now, and we've seen the challenges this morning. These will require investment. St Helier. Parking is a genuine issue in St Helier for residents, workers and visitors. And whilst being committed to making other forms of transport more accessible, we cannot ignore the fact that for a vibrant capital, we need to provide the facilities. The previous minister started some good work with the markets, and working with the Constable of St Helier, this is an area I'd like to see progress, along with the Lido at Hov Depart. Another area that I will look to work on with my colleagues is on some of the key regeneration tasks concerning access to town, including bringing forward the very overdue strategies for walking, cycling, bus travel and parking. Implementing extensional walking and cycling routes and improving the public realm in the town centre is something I intend to work closely with the Connétable of St Helier with. In closing, Ma'am, I would like to pay tribute to the team at Infrastructure. I certainly hope that I can work with them to ensure that together we can keep the island running. Thank you.
Thank you, Connétable. I invite questions from the chair. I think the first light I saw on was yours, Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, Mark. The Connétable will have been in the Assembly with the previous Bridging Island plan, and he's rightly said about the issues to do with drainage. And we are, as of today, I'm sure the Minister Designate is aware, there isn't a single spade in the ground in relation to any of the rezoned sites. Would he kindly advise, as a new member of the Council of Ministers, whether he would advocate, given this very challenging issue with infrastructure and sewage, whether or not there is a case to re-looking at some of the areas of the Bridging Island plan and perhaps in some of those sites that were the preferred sites that on perhaps a misunderstanding weren't passed? I'm most grateful.
Thank you for the question. I'm not sure if it's more relevant for the Planning Minister, but I'll give you my view. My view is that we need to do another island plan and not run it over for a lengthy period of time. I think we need to work together, housing, planning and myself, and to prioritise works, prioritise sites, and if we can't find sites that have got facilities, then we may need to come back to this Assembly with sites that have got facilities. Thank you.
Supplementary, Deputy.
I would say the Constable has answered it brilliantly. Thank you.
Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. The candidate spoke about the need for investment in many areas, but not so much about funding. So does the candidate support the development of waste charges as proposed in the government plan that has just been passed by the Assembly?
Thank you for the question. I'm taken back to 2016, the last time that waste charges were discussed in this, by the state, and I was a member of the Chamber of Commerce chairing their Transport and Tourism Committee. At that time, I felt the charges weren't targeted enough. They were targeted at the hospitality industry in the main. We've got to look at ways of funding. The report that I referred to in my speech identifies a further £52.4 million funding, and we've got a massive gap. So we will have to look at raising funds, and I'll look to work with my colleagues and how we can do that.
Supplementary, Deputy Renouf.
Yes, so would he commit to bringing in such charges before the next election?
So I'll do what's, I'll do what's right for the island. For me, it's about needing the monies now, sooner rather than later. It's not about getting re-elected. It's about doing what's right for the island, short term, medium term, and long term.
Constable of St Brelard.
Thank you, ma'am. The Connétable referred to drains earlier on. I just wondered what his position was with regard to the extension of the main drains network to those properties which are as yet not connected. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. As someone that represents people in the north of the island, I'm sure that the Constable will know my answer. It's 2024, and we've got so many houses and areas that don't have access to mains drains. it's embarrassing for an island of our wealth. We've got to look at different ways of taking waste from properties, whether that's in the traditional way that we do it or looking at modern ways of doing that. At Bonwy, we have a different way of doing it with the pumping station there. We've got to look for new ways, inventive ways. And I would also add that water is also needed to some of these areas.
Supplementary, Conatable.
Does the Conatable feel he might be considering a sewage tax in the future?
I think I would refer to my earlier answer to Deputy Renouf. We will have to look at ways of funding and see how we can do that. There are suggestions of looking at Jersey Water and amalgamating Jersey Water with our wastewater. So there's a number of different ways, but what we can't do is delay. We need to get on with this and not worry about election cycles. Thank you.
Dijon.
Thank you, ma'am. What proposals will the candidate bring forward to make Jersey Property Holdings and JDC work better for the people and communities and environment of Jersey?
I think there are a lot of synergies between the two. I have spoken about that in the past, but I'm not up to date to where those plans currently are. I think we can do a lot more together. I think we've got a lot of duplication. One of the challenges for Property Holdings is recruitment. And I know that SOJDC have got a lot of talented people. It's about whether or not we can leverage that resource to help both parties.
Supplementary.
Thank you. Watching how hard it was for the former infrastructure minister to get enough funding for all the areas in need, as the candidate has outlined, how will the candidate convince the Council of Ministers to give or get more funding from the current restrained budget to make sure that Jersey Property Holdings makes properties fit for purpose, including increasing energy efficiency and reducing carbon emissions?
Thank you for the question. Currently, there is no funding for energy efficiency in our buildings, and yet we are offering people who can afford to put energy efficiency in their homes subsidies. I think we need to look at the money that we've got and look how we use that. Where do we get the best benefits from? So we've got schools which are used for several hours a day for not all year round. Would we get better use out of insulating homes, or do we look at schools? So there's a lot of work to do in that area, and I'm very keen to pursue that. Thank you.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, ma'am. I would like to ask Constable if he will progress as soon as possible with the First Tower playing field delivery for the First Tower school. As plans were drafted by the end of 22, the feasibility study has been done, and we just need to progress and make sure that schools have a field.
I thank the Deputy for her question. I also thank her for her great support at St John, where we faced a similar challenge and where hopefully we'll be delivering the playing field this summer after many years of trying. I'm not familiar with where that project the Deputy mentions is in terms of planning and funding, but it's something I'm prepared to look at and get back to the Deputy. Thank you.
Supplementary, Deputy. Okay. Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, ma'am. What will the candidate do to ensure that the voices of children feature in his work, given the Youth Parliament's interest in play spaces and retaining trees around the island?
Thank the Deputy for her question. If I can take the two parts, we need to do something after Storm Ciarán. Clearly, we've got a lot of work to do, and we need to work with the whole community, including youngsters. I remember the Millennium Project at St Catherine's, when trees were bought for youngsters as a way of celebrating the millennium, so we need to try and do something like that. My colleague to my right, the Constable of St Peter, mentioned the work that the Conitables are doing around play areas. So we're engaging with an expert. We're trying to work together to make efficiencies. We're looking, St Martin's has got a great example of a built play area, but they've also got a great example of a natural play area. And the one benefit of Storm Ciarán is there's not lots of natural play areas that have been made available to us.
Supplementary, Deputy.
Supplementary, please. Could the candidate advise what he will do also to improve safer routes to school, and particularly in the area of St Saviour, which of course has the most concentration of schools in the island?
Thank the Deputy for her question. As I mentioned, I'm well aware of the time it's taken previously for work to be carried out to make simple changes. I'm a great fan in trying things, and I call it guerrilla traffic works by using cones instead of laying down pavements. Try things first. One of the challenges the department's had is around recruitment. We've got a large reliance on expensive contractors and consultants, and I'll work with the department to try and reduce this to get some locally employed people so we can actually make progress. Thank you.
Deputy Catherine Curtis.
Thank you, Ma'am. Last year, the Assembly approved a proposition I brought to reinstate the reuse centre at La Collette. Could the Constable confirm that he will work to bring this to fruition as soon as possible, and that he will support all recycling and reuse practices which benefit the public?
Ma'am, I'd be very happy to give that commitment. If you follow my social media, you'll see once a month I post reduce, reuse, recycle, because we're very passionate about it in my part of the island. I think the La Collette facility is an excellent facility. I think we can do a whole lot more with the facility. I believe it's currently out to tender, and I look forward to getting that resolved as soon as we practically can. Thank you.
Supplementary, Deputy. Deputy Morrell.
Thank you, Ma'am. The Conatable mentioned in his speech, quite rightly, the need to invest in properties owned by the states of Jersey. Is he opposed at all to also potentially selling some properties that are owned by the states of Jersey?
Not at all. Sometimes you've got to de-invest when you no longer need something. I was shocked yesterday, Ma'am, to find a property that's owned by Property Holdings, that's got a States Department in it that pays rent, and it's got an ALO in the same building that doesn't pay rent. Clearly something's not correct. I think there's been a recent review about the condition of properties. I couldn't tell you where those 260 or 800 properties are, but in a year's time, I'm sure I could tell you where the vast majority are.
No supplementary, Deputy. Deputy Howell.
Thank you, Ma'am. Does the Constable have any ideas and thoughts about what he may do with Fort Regent? Thank you, sir. Ma'am.
Like many, I spent a lot of my youth at Fort Regent. I have many happy memories, and one of my worst memories when I was thrown in at the deep end by a teacher when we had to do our swimming lesson. But we do have many happy memories. I think it's vital that we retain the soft play area at Fort Regent for young families, unless we can find an alternative venue. I spoke briefly with Deputy Stevenson yesterday and officers. There's possibility to site a skate park there. They're looking for simple solutions which are cost effective and which we can introduce in a phased approach. I need to get up to speed on the current plans. And again, it comes back to funding, but I do think we can do things. I understand that the roof is structurally sound. It may need a new cover, but I think we can do a lot of things there and get it back used for the whole community. Thank you.
Supplementary, Deputy.
Does the Constable agree at the moment there is very limited indoor space for children and families, and it's really vital that we get on as quickly as we can? Thank you, Ma'am.
I do. We do have a number of facilities. The challenge for a lot of the facilities is the cost of accessing those facilities. We've got some terrific facilities around the island. It's affordable facilities that we need for young families, and we need to make sure that what we've got works. I spoke earlier about a central booking system for school facilities. We've got some amazing facilities around the island at our local schools, which are totally underutilised. I've enjoyed going to concerts at Hope Valley. That should be far more utilised. We've got sports halls which sit empty night after night, week after week, and we've got to do far more to open those up to the community rather than building more additional properties.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, Ma'am, and I'll change my question following Deputy Morell's on public ownership of the estate. The public of the island have owned an estate for hundreds of years, and if the Minister is happy with disposal of assets, does he also then believe we should be reinvesting in new assets to ensure that this government owns land for the people of the island for hundreds more years?
I do, and I think my predecessor had started some work on that. I mentioned car parking. We need to provide more car parking, so we need to identify potential sites and go out and make some strategic purchases. We should also be doing the same for homes and other things that we need. Where we've got sites, existing sites, and buying land next to those sites would make sense for future-proofing, we should absolutely look at that and divest in those properties that we don't have a use for and use that money for things that we can use.
Supplementary.
Yes, thank you, and that's reassuring. Ma'am, one such site we have is Mont de la Ville, on which Fort Regent sits, which was previously owned by the Procureurs de la Ville before being purchased by the British, and we only received it back about 80 years ago. Does a candidate believe that we should retain ownership in the public to enjoy for hundreds of years and not split up the site?
I think in general I agree with that statement, Mom, but I do believe that we should look in the possibility of long-term leases, potentially for a hotel, which has been discussed. So I wouldn't rule that out, but I think overall we should retain the ownership in what is absolutely a key site for the island.
Constable Trinity.
Thank you, ma'am. If I can ask the constable, I'm sure he's not yet up to speed with all of the current plans of the department, but I could advise him that over the last few months I've been working closely with the previous minister and the then Assistant Minister for Education to deliver some road safety improvements for Trinity School. The plans are in place and funding and the arrangements have previously been agreed. Could I ask him if he would be committed to keeping the department's foot on the pedal to keep this and have this project delivered in the summer recess 2024 as was originally planned? Thank you.
Thank you, the Connétable, for the question. Without knowing the detail, I would like to say yes. I'd put a proviso there in case there was something that I'm not aware of that would prevent that. As I said earlier, we need to do things quicker. St John's has been looking at road safety improvements for probably 15 years. So we're a little bit behind my colleague behind me. So I'm aware of the frustrations within the community. You go out to consult, you get people on side, it takes forever for something to happen, and then people change their mind. You've got to almost start again. Once we've made some decisions, we need to get on with it. And I assure the Connétable that I will do my very best to see that that happens this summer.
Connétable, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you.
Connétable of St Mary.
Thank you, ma'am. And noting the candidate's various references to sporting facilities in his address, could he advise on the extent of infrastructure's future involvement in the operation of sporting facilities, and is there indeed any intention to transfer that area into his department?
Thank the Connétable for his question. Sporting facilities is something that I'm quite passionate about, actually, and before I joined the Assembly I was working with a number of people in setting up a facilities group for people who provided sports facilities. I suppose I should declare an interest in as much as I'm a director of a sporting facility at St John. We haven't had the discussions about the detail. Sport is something I am passionate about, I do know something about, and I look forward to working with the Chief Minister and colleagues in finding a way forward for sport. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary, Connétable?
So, related to my question, does that mean there's a possibility that responsibility for sport might be transferred to infrastructure?
Currently we have sport in facilities, in infrastructure, and part of it is with sustainable economic development. We haven't had those discussions, and I wouldn't like to commit either way going forward.
Deputy Porre.
This question is with regards to property holdings and the management of the future development of the markets. Is the deputy aware of this development, and if so, is he also aware of how the market traders feel presently in terms of insecurity, instability and dissatisfaction, and how those plans have been imposed upon them, and how this is affecting their well-being and their ability to make long-term plans to their business and secure their livelihood? And if the deputy is aware of it, what would he intend to do with regards to communicate with the traders? Thank you.
I thank the Deputy for the question. This is an area that I know that the Constable of St Helier is also very keen in. I'm not aware of the issues that the Deputy raises. I am aware that we've just announced late opening for 2 restaurants, opening on Thursday afternoons. I'd encourage people to, next time in the market, to stop, look up, look around and see what an absolute jewel we have there. I would commit to working with those market traders. I thoroughly enjoy, for example, going to Borough Market in London, and I think we can recreate something on a much smaller scale here, where it's really vibrant, exciting place, where it's a destination not only for locals but visitors as well.
Deputy Joseph.
I know the time is very short. The Constable is a seasoned political operator because he's publicly declared, we've both helped on election campaigns for an individual. Can I just press the candidate, who's obviously going to get the job, what are his red lines about a coalition agreement with Reform? Because it was asked earlier about a sewage tax. Now, in this new government, where are the red lines? Is it a higher tax or a sewage tax? And has he had any idea about where the red lines in the new government are going to be? Because they will have some.
I thank the Deputy for his question. I think the Deputy probably is unaware of the timescales that have happened since last week's changes. There's been no discussion about liquid waste, any other waste, any taxes, any charges. There has been no discussion whatsoever. I have an open mind going into this. I think what we need to do is realise that we've got areas of our infrastructure that we've totally underinvested in for many, many years, and we need to find a way of funding those, whether that is divesting in property.
Saved by the bell there, Conatub.
Thank you.
Just asked about higher tax, but...
As the speech and period of questions has been complete, I can confirm that the Conatub of St John has been selected for appointment as Minister for Infrastructure. Chief Minister, your next candidate.
Thank you, ma'am. I would like to nominate Deputy Steve Luce for the position of Environment Minister. Thank you.
Deputy Luce. Oh, sorry, is that nomination seconded? Sorry. Yes. Are there any other nominations? Very well. Deputy Luce.
Thank you, ma'am. Can I start, ma'am, by thanking the Chief Minister Designate for his support and putting me forward for this role, and also for the support I've received from members in this Assembly and many people outside of the Assembly. As we all know, it's a short term to the next election, a little more than 2 years before PERTA starts again, and this speech may reflect the shortness of that term. But I want to say to members straight at the outset that in many ways, under my leadership, it will be steady as it goes. A different skipper at the helm, the wind may be coming from a different direction, but I'm going to adjust the sails and the tiller, keep the boat moving in the same direction, and that direction is doing the best I can with this portfolio for all islanders. I want to start, sir, if I might, by talking about farming. I was brought up when it was a Department of Agriculture and Fisheries, and I want to talk about farming straight off, and I want to go straight to the analogy of brown cows in green fields. For me, sir, the dairy industry is key to our countryside. It provides rotation for our fields. It's a really big part of the picture, and I want to keep amending the rural support scheme, which has worked so well recently to protect our Jersey cows. They keep our island beautiful, and I mean to keep it that way. We know that farmers are key to our countryside, and the recent devastation they've faced, they're going to need some help with. The only thing I will say about trees is I will do nothing that will hinder anybody planting a tree in the near future. Recently, sir, members will know I brought a proposition to the Assembly for more money for farmers, and I'm going to keep that in mind, as they will need continued support to provide increases to biodiversity, betterment of soil quality, while keeping our land productive. I want us to produce more local food, because food security is vital. We realise, of course, we can't grow everything in Jersey, so imports are also essential. But we are moving towards a countryside with more small holdings, and I will encourage those people to invest and to take part in that move away from bigger and bigger farms to more smaller entities. Could I speak very briefly now about fishing and how I would aim to keep our fleet profitable? There must be ways, and I will investigate them, all new ways to make more money for fishermen, because it's only when fishing boats are out fishing that they make a living, and it's hugely expensive just to keep a boat tied up in harbour. Having to go out fishing and to make money, you need stocks to catch and to sell, and stock management will be key. Obviously, once you've caught those fish, exports and local sales are also a priority, and we have to find ways to increase the added value of that product we take out of our water. We're going to need some facilities to do that on shore, and I'll be looking to other ministers to help me with that. Sir, Brexit was a huge challenge, but we've got through it. We're now managing our local waters, and that is a massive step forward. But exporting is still not as easy as it was before Brexit happened, and I want to continue to do what I can to ease this problem. First of all, I don't want local requirements to be a hurdle, and I'll do whatever I can to make the local requirements as simple as possible for fishermen to maintain. But one of the issues we do face is not having a border inspection post in the EU close to our waters, and I'll continue working on that issue with the Minister for the Environment, Economic Development and External Relations to see what we can do about that. I want to continue to work with our French neighbours, our French cousins, and that's fishermen and politicians alike, because we've worked and fished alongside each other forever, and we need to keep doing that. We need to keep that dialogue working. But I know there's a way of managing and increasing the stock in our waters, but we need to keep our local fleet viable while we get to that position. I can assure fishermen that I will do all I can to keep them in business while we take the steps to safeguard and increase our precious resources. So the warming of our oceans is changing the species that we see in our waters, and we need to adjust in order to cope with that. While we're talking about water, that leads me to discussions on a wind farm. This is itself another challenge to our fishing grounds, but we're going to keep this project moving because there are questions, many questions to be answered before we take the big decision in this assembly. Why did we want a wind farm? Why did we want to start talking about it? Was it carbon? It can't really be, because replacing one form of sustainable energy with another won't make very much of a difference. Was it about security of power on the island? If that's the case, we'll need to make sure some of that power lands on our shores. There'll be infrastructure implications and cost implications to that. Maybe it's just profitability and the money we might raise from taxing the energy that's sold or just leasing the seabed. Either way, there's massive costs involved, and it's my view that we would have to look to private money to do that, because the risk to our island might be too great. Finally, there's implications for the Channel Island energy grid that we'd have to take into account. The last issue I want to talk about generally when it comes to our waters, sir, is the Marine Spatial Plan. And I'll say straight off the top that it wouldn't have been my top priority, but this work is in progress, and it's my intention now to keep it moving. The consultation has just been completed, and we need to look at the responses we've had from everyone. I intend to address and resolve the two main issues. One of closing some of our well-used and vital fishing areas for our scallop dredgers, and also the question of access to our offshore reefs. And I'll look to provide solutions that satisfy all sides, as challenging as that may be, and I'm under no illusions how challenging that could well be. I want to talk very briefly, sir, about planning and the department. First, I would say design is everything for me. I think we could do so much better on design, and I will encourage architects to deliver that. I also want to deliver on the public realm, on schools, and I want to ease the way that the department deals with application and the service that the department provides. Can we make it simpler? Can we reduce the cost? How can we use building control to speed up the build? I want the department to return to what it was a department I knew many years ago, a department that said yes, and a department that worked with people to get their applications over the line. One issue that the Minister and I have differed on over the last couple of years is whether we should be redebating the island plan in 2 years' time. I'm very clear in my view that when we passed the draft at the Bridging Island plan, it was a 4-year plan, and that it should come back in 2026. And I'll be looking to not impose anything, but to discuss with others whether that's still the best thing to do. Is what we have now too complicated? Are there too many policies? One thing we do know is that we need to be passing housing sites that can be built, because we know we can't wait another 6 or 7 years to choose some more sites. I'll come back to housing in a moment, if I may, sir, but very quickly. Under carbon, I want to look at the energy law. It's too outdated. We've got to look, obviously, at transport and housing and reducing gas and oil and carbon emissions. Do we have the electricity and the network to cope with the takeover from these carbon-emitting fuels? We've got to look forward to reducing carbon emissions, but we have to do it sensibly, in my view. We can't, for example, have islanders getting very cold and freezing in their old historic homes because we don't allow them a sensible form of heating. For me, more carrots and less sticks. Finally, sir, and I wish I'd left myself more time, housing. Deputy Gorse, to my right, said in his speech last week, affordable housing. We need to get there, but to prioritise the big issues. Deputy Mezek spoke of the housing crisis, and Deputy Farnan, the Chief Minister in front of us. Affordable housing is the issue, and I completely agree. It has to be addressed. Yes, we're getting on in the north of town with the sites that we've identified, but we need safe walking routes, schools, community facilities. And I commit, in the few seconds I have got left, sir, I commit to working with the Infrastructure Minister and the Housing Minister particularly to resolve these issues. In conclusion, sir, some may say this is a poison chalice of a ministry, but I absolutely do not see it that way. I'm hugely enthusiastic about my chance to influence policy on the environment, on our territorial waters, on our countryside. I thank members and the Chief Minister for his support.
Thank you, Deputy. We now have up to 20 minutes of questions. And the first question is from Deputy Chair.
Last year, the Assembly passed P14 to introduce a land development tax equivalent charging mechanism to capture the increase in land values that happens when land is rezoned for housing. Will the candidate commit to bringing forward such a tax or charge?
So this is a painful memory for me, in as much as in my last spell as a Minister for Planning and Environment, I proposed a community levy. I'm trying to think of the exact, CIL was the acronym, but it said if somebody got a planning permission to do a large scheme, that a small percentage of the uplift in value should be put to a community scheme and improve the island for everybody else. And I got well and truly hammered on the floor of this Assembly. It's one of those regrets. But I still believe in the principle. If somebody gets an uplift in value through a stamp that comes down in a planning department, it costs the states, it costs the department nothing to do that. But an individual courtesy of that decision does get a huge increase in value, and I think it's only right that a small amount of that value goes back to the state and in some way, shape and form is used for the benefit of all islanders. So I will look at it. But I would say it's still a painful memory of the last time I tried to do this on the floor of the Assembly.
Thank you, Deputy. Supplementary?
Yes, please. Because it has been already passed as P14, the candidate would be happy to know, will he commit to ensure that no more fields are brought forward for rezoning until such a charge has been established under P14?
So I have to say to the Assembly that, as I said literally a few minutes ago, my top priority, along with other ministers, is housing provision. And if I had to make the decision between rezoning another green field for housing or waiting for this to come along, I think I'd have to go with the housing, to be perfectly honest. Having said that, I don't think if the principle has been passed, it's something that should hold us back particularly. And I will do my best in short order to ensure that we do get on and get that in place so that if more fields are rezoned, at least there's a mechanism to recover some of that uplift in value.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. The Bridging Island Plan contains a commitment that the Ministers for Environment, Economy and Sites will work together on a play strategy for Jersey. What does the candidate interpret his role as being as part of that commitment, and how does he intend to play his part to achieve it?
Deputy.
Sir, it's the Environment Minister's job to do work with others as much as he possibly can. But as many members will know, it's not really for the Environment Minister or the Department to come forward with those plans, in as much as somebody who's going to have to make a decision on the potential application in the future, and Minister and officers have to stand back in the initial stages to make sure they're not passing too much of a view in case they have to make that final decision and they would conflict themselves. Having said that, I have seen the benefit of the new play area, wonderful play area we've just had in St Martin, already being heavily used. I knew through parish surgeries that it was very much in demand, and areas for play, whether that's for very young children or maybe young teenagers, are vital. Areas, places they can go outside of school hours, anything to avoid them hanging around with nothing to do. They need to be organised and have these areas. So I will do my part, and if any other minister comes forward, and I'm looking particularly at the moment at the infrastructure minister, I'm sure we'd have discussions about moving those forward as quickly as we possibly could.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. I'm not quite clear if that means that the deputy would commit to that commitment in the Bridging Island Plan continuing, or his department's involvement with it, but perhaps that's a question for another day. Given what he's just said about play and planning policy, and specifically actually mentioning the St Martin's project, we have encountered questions around the need for planning permissions for pieces of equipment and the time, cost and process associated with that. Will the candidate commit to review the current rules around play equipment and planning with a view to potentially simplifying them and perhaps even allowing more permitted development?
I've always strived where possible to increase the amount of permitted development that any individual on the island is allowed to do without permission. It's certainly something we can look at. I know you need to be really, really careful, in as much as every time you change a rule, there will be people who will look to go further than you want them to. But yes, I agree with the principle of increasing permitted development. And getting back to the play areas, I did make a commitment. I was thinking particularly about the areas in the north of town where we're building housing at the moment, on the Mayfair Hotel, Ann Street Brewery, Play.com. We've got the brewery just about to start building. You know, we have to provide open, green amenity spaces for these communities, particularly. Those of us who are lucky enough to live in the countryside have open air, have fields, they have space to move. But green and open and play areas, for that matter, are vital, and the more densely populated the area, the more important it becomes.
Thank you. Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. The candidate mentioned in his speech design, and if one walks around St Helier or travels around the island, they will come across architecture that does not meet the character of the area, does not lift Jersey, whether it be traditional or modern. So how does the candidate intend to address improving design quality in new developments, and does he think planners are suitably equipped with guidance to assess and enforce this in applications?
Deputy.
Well, there are design policies in the island plan, as the deputy will know, and any officer that adjudicates on an application is entitled to interpret those policies as they see fit. So I'm fortunate enough to travel to London on a reasonably regular basis, and every time I go there I'm amazed and blown away by some of the architecture, some of the design that I see there. And I come back to St Helier and to Jersey and wish that on many occasions we've taken some of that brave design to have some really outstanding architecture. And I have said it before, I found it disappointing, some of the recent applications in the middle of St Town, in the heart of our capital, are so lacking in outstanding design. So I will go away. I take the Deputy's point that, some sort of modern design may not fit very well in the countryside where granite farmhouses and the like are more typical. But I think it's hugely important that we look at the area of the island that we're discussing, and it may be the first conservation area that the previous minister has designated, or will be likely to designate as St Albans, where you see a character there that we would want to replicate and continue to replicate. But it may be that that particular type of design would not suit another part of town or another part of the island. So I think it's very local, but depending where it is, there's certainly some guidance that can be given to officers. But I just go back to the ability to have outstanding and uplifting design in outstanding buildings in St Helier is something I would encourage as much as possible.
Supplementary?
Yes, please, sir. Thank you. The candidate referenced some rather disappointing architectural designs in St Helier, but those were approved under island plans which had policies such as GD6 design quality. So does the candidate believe we need to extend or review the remit of the Jersey Architectural Commission and look at the board of that and how we engage them to ensure that these policies are enforced, and that when we see new large developments, they are something we can be proud of?
So I think I'd encourage any of these large developments to be put to the Architectural Commission and to be viewed by them and to get their reaction. We have some very, very good people on that group, and they're there to advise applicants as to where they might improve. And certainly when I meet them, I will certainly stress my desire to maybe look at design and look at other types of design, and maybe if we can push more applications, large applications in their direction, their input can be taken on board by the architects for the applicant and then get reflected in the final design of the application.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Breniff.
Thank you, sir. Does the candidate accept that at a time when private investors are finding it difficult to invest in large-scale projects, and even when they gain planning permission are not necessarily bringing them forward for development, that possibly the best tool that he has available in terms of supplying houses is to work with the ALOs, Andium and JDC, and tell them to bring forward proposals that sit comfortably within the island plan, that will get through the planning system easily and quickly, and will therefore be deliverable within timeframes because they are controllable by us as taxpayers.
Deputy.
Time frame is something I want to take a good look at, sir. I don't necessarily want to shorten the 8-week and 13-week, but I would want to make sure that we aspire as best we can to deliver on those time frames. But of course, meeting policies is just one thing. There's a number of factors that can influence the time taken to build out a project. But I take the Deputy's views exactly on board. If we have minimum sizes, I don't think it's right that our arm's length organisations, and the two that he mentioned in particular, come forward with applications which only just meet, or meet depending how you view it, meet those requirements. It's incumbent upon us, ministers, whether that's the Housing Minister, Infrastructure Minister, myself and others, to come forward with ways to build houses for those people who desperately need them as quickly as we possibly can. And those houses, as the Housing Minister said, need to be, in many cases, 2- and 3-bedroom houses. We need to make sure they're the right size for people. The last thing we want is people living in cramped properties where it's an additional challenge to bring up a family where you have no space to do anything. So I do agree with the Deputy.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. Thinking particularly about the waterfront, would he agree that a possible way forward for developing the waterfront might be to persuade the JDC to think less about the absolute maximum return and more about the public realm and the public benefit, and that the conversations that could be had with the JDC could be persuade them to move along that direction. And if that requires some give and take from government in terms of funding and so on, that might be a better solution rather than relying on the maximum commercial return, which means pushing the designs and the scale to the very limit and possible planning refusal.
I can't disagree with that, sir. The Jersey Development Company at the moment provide us with things that we would not necessarily get out of the pure private developers, and I'm thinking particularly about the small areas of public realm which we do get from them. It would be nice to see larger areas of public realm, and I would be encouraging them with the waterfront to maintain areas that are as large as possible for the public to enjoy. I have to say, when it comes to the waterfront, I have been slightly disappointed by the number of iterations now that we've seen of waterfront master plans. There was a particular one that I thought was good, which had a lot of concentration on sight lines, so wherever you were on the site, you could look distances at Noama or at Elizabeth Castle or back up towards town, and I found the last iteration maybe slightly more disappointing, albeit that it was concentrating on housing. But I take the Minister's view on board. These arm's length organisations that are owned by us are developing our land, and I think it's incumbent upon us to provide a good percentage of that land for the public, for all the public of the island to enjoy, and not just the ones that are living there.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. Could the Deputy please explain his position with respect to the St Rellard's Bay improvement plan, for which funding has been granted, and whether he will support it being developed during his office?
Deputy.
So I've been aware of the Deputy's stance on St Billard's for some time, since before she became a States member, and certainly I've been involved in various applications in St Billard's Bay. And I think there's many occasions where you have conflict. That might be too strong a word, but there's a middle ground to be taken. We need to find ways to keep St Billard's Bay vibrant for tourism. It's one of the most beautiful bays, not only in the island or the Channel Islands, but in the south of England, and we need to keep it that way. But at the same time, if people are going to enjoy it, they need to have tourist facilities in order to do that. They may have houses in which they want to live in, if they're fortunate enough to own in that area. But I think we need to tread a middle ground. Certainly some of the more recent policy which has become applicable down there, I think is maybe slightly too strong. And I'm thinking particularly about the policy which doesn't allow any increase in footprint. That might be slightly precluding us from moving forward. But I would say to the Deputy, I would be keen to look at all sides of the argument. I don't want to exclude tourists. I don't want to exclude people who would seek to do a better job with their home in that area. At the same time, I don't want to exclude other islanders from not being able to visit.
Supplementary, Deputy Scott?
Yes, sir. I just would like to point out the restriction on footprints that just relates to residential homes, and would ask if the Deputy would answer the question about whether he would support the development of the St Rellard's Bay improvement plan, given that there is funding with it for it.
Yes, so I'm keen to support the development of that plan. I would say to members, however, that one of the very few conflictions I do have in this job is that I do own a small number of shares in a hotel at St Billard's, and I just put on notice that I'd have to be quite careful about how I push those developments forward.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Catherine Curtis.
Thank you, sir. My question's about the food law. With around 4,000 islanders at risk of sudden death through anaphylaxis, will the Deputy prioritise bringing forward the regulations of the food law, including allergen labelling, to help prevent possible fatalities?
Deputy.
Yes, sir, I'm happy to do that. I think it's important in this day and age where increasing numbers of islanders face allergies to all sorts of different types of foods, that it's important they know exactly what they're buying when they buy it. So I will work with the Deputy on that issue.
Supplementary? No. Deputy Howell.
Thank you, sir. What changes does the Deputy intend to make to the Planning Department to make it good and work for islanders and also good for members of staff? Thank you, sir.
So it's some years now since I worked closely inside the planning department, and I think it's already good, but it needs to be better. It's clear. We had a review and a report not very long ago now, which came out with a number of recommendations, and I think it's incumbent upon me in very short order to make sure that the progress that was a response to that McKinnon review is on track. Certainly, I see improvements in some areas, but I have to say, continually told by other people that the time to register their applications and get onto that time, when the clock is ticking, seems to take a long time. Other people say to me they still struggle to get responses from the department, but of course I'm also been in this assembly a little while, and before I make any comments on any of those to people and members of the general public, I like to get my facts straight, and it's always worth speaking to the other side of the fence and officers in particular and find out exactly the detail behind any application before commenting too far.
Parliamentary. Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. When he was Environment Minister in 2015, the Deputy said he was in favour of building a tower at least 3 times taller than the current high buildings in St Helier. So that would be at about 25 to 30 storeys high. Is he still in favour?
I think the fundamental answer probably is yes, sir. And that was done for a reason. I look at all sorts of capital cities, towns, large cities around the globe, around Europe, around England, where each of them has an individual building which is and it immediately identifies where they are. And the site that I had in mind then is still available, actually, as it turns out. And I could see the benefit of a architectural competition and a building going on the site so that we would stand out, St Helier would stand out, and people would know when they're a long way away or close by, they'd look up and they'd say, yep, that was a really good bit of architecture. That's actually made St Helier a better place. It would be a standout building. It wouldn't encourage the rest of the buildings around side to come up alongside it. I'm not looking to do that. But something like the Spinnaker Tower in Portsmouth, for example, is a classic example of that. So I think fundamentally, yes, I haven't changed my view. I know it's controversial. I got ridiculed by some for saying it before, but hey, why not?
Supplementary in the next 14 seconds. No. Well, I think that brings the allotted time to an end, and as there were no other nominations, and as the speech and the period of questions has been completed, I confirm Deputy Luce has been selected for appointment as Minister for the Environment. Chief Minister Designate, we now move to nomination for the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development.
Thank you, sir. And I am pleased to nominate Deputy Kirsten Morell for the role of Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Thank you.
Is the nomination seconded?
Yes, sir.
Are there any other nominations? Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I'm honoured to have been nominated by the Chief Minister Designate for the position of Minister for Sustainable Economic Development, a role which I am passionate about and which I've been privileged to hold for the past 18 months. During that short time, I've worked with the incredibly talented team in the Economy Department. They share my belief that Jersey's economy has a bright future ahead of it, despite the many challenges that we face today. I would like to thank all the officers that have worked with and supported me over the past 18 months as Minister. Since I was first appointed Assistant Minister by the Chief Minister Designate in late 2020, I've adopted a collaborative approach to policy making and working together with officers and Assistant Ministers, Deputies Alex Curtis and Lucy Stevenson, to whom I am incredibly grateful for their hard work and support. We have listened to the business community across a range of sectors. All of those sectors had asked for government to provide direction to their industries, a direction that in many cases had not been provided for decades. My immediate aim as Minister was to provide that direction and then start delivering on those strategic visions for the island's economy. Adopting this methodology has enabled us to build close relationships and, I believe, developed a level of trust between the Economy Department and the local business community that many felt they had not experienced for some while. I am proud of this, and I'm grateful for the support that I know has been shown for me continuing in this role by farmers, fishermen, hoteliers, restaurateurs, retailers, artists and entrepreneurs, to name just a few of the occupations that I and my colleagues have worked closely with since I was first elected as Minister. I'm also pleased to have developed good relations with sector organisations such as the Jersey Hospitality Association, the Chamber of Commerce, the Jersey Farmers Union, the Jersey Fishermen's Association, Luxury Jersey Hotels. I've also worked closely with organisations such as Scoop and Regen as we further develop the groundbreaking rural support scheme that has not only been looked at for adoption in other jurisdictions, but has already attracted 20 more small-scale farmers into the industry. Sir, trust is vital to building confidence in the future of Jersey's economy, while stability and continuity are crucial to maintaining that confidence. At a challenging time for virtually all Western economies, I believe we need to do all we can to give our island's businesses every advantage as they compete both locally and globally. Political stability and continuity in those government departments that represent the economy is crucial if we are going to enable Jersey's entrepreneurs, investors and financial institutions to be successful on the global stage. When I last stood before this Assembly seeking its approval to act as Minister, I explained that I believe we need to develop a truly sustainable economy in the island. That is an economy which will be long-lasting because it respects the need to deliver for islanders today, whilst leaving the island's resources available for future generations so that they can enjoy living and working in the island of the future. 1 second. Sir, that vision has been delivered as the Future Economy Programme, a strategic approach to developing our economy that is the answer to those islanders who have rightly been demanding strategic direction, a North Star, if you will, that helps them understand how we, as political leaders, would like to see the island's economy developing. That vision is to be a consistently high-performing, environmentally sustainable and technologically advanced small island economy by 2040. It is underpinned by 5 themes: a resilient economy that is able to withstand shocks, global trends and is agile to change, an innovative economy with a culture of entrepreneurialism and innovation, a skilled economy that embraces a culture of lifelong learning, supporting the future needs of the island, a fair economy with growth that benefits all islanders. And, sir, it must be an international economy that protects our global reputation and diversifies our export opportunities. The Future Economy Programme is designed to enable us to prepare for the needs of the future with the known demographic challenges that we face, whilst giving us the flexibility to address short-term issues that we all know are making it more difficult for all of us. The rising cost of living is making it genuinely difficult for islanders to continue living here, and combined with external factors such as Brexit and COVID, this has led to a reduced ability to find the people we need to create a vibrant economy. Providing affordable housing and goods is therefore vital to maintaining the success of our island, and I will work closely together with my fellow ministers to achieve this. Sir, it is really important that the Assembly understands that my approach to economic development starts with one simple idea, that the economy is about people. Whilst we often talk in terms such as productivity or economic output, the truth is that people, islanders, make our economy. And for the economy to thrive, government needs to enable an environment in which we, the people, can thrive. There's nothing I like more than seeing islanders coming up with amazing ideas and turning them into real enterprises that provide work and incomes for more islanders. Jersey is beautiful, there's no doubt, but it needs to be more than that. If young islanders are to see themselves living here for the rest of their lives, then Jersey needs to be innovative, bold, international and affordable. It needs to offer possibility and excitement, a range of careers to suit different people and offer us all the possibility of learning throughout our lives so we can remain fulfilled at work as we all develop as individuals. Enabling Jersey to become more entrepreneurial is at the heart of the Barriers to Business work, which we have begun with the publication by Jersey Business of a report which has for the first time enabled us to hear the voice of the business community and so has provided direction for government to change those areas of process and regulation that are hindering, not helping business. It has also highlighted the fact that the lack of staff is the most important barrier that we need to overcome. And working with the Home Affairs and Education Ministers, I'll work tirelessly to address this issue. Sir, there is no shortcut to economic development, but by working with the relevant sectors and our delivery partners, the ALOs, Digital Jersey, Jersey Business, Visit Jersey, Jersey Sport, as well as those in the arts and heritage sector, we are making a difference, and people outside the island are seeing a place in which they would like to invest. Over the coming year, sir, we expect to see a feature film about our own Claude Cahun made in the island. Not only will this bring new opportunities for islanders, but it will put Jersey on the map, boosting tourism and leaving behind a filmmaking infrastructure that can be used into the future. We can also look forward to a prominent TV series being made in Jersey. It takes time. We are working with international hotel groups that are seeking sites in Jersey, and we're also working with government and state-owned entities to see whether publicly owned sites can be developed for both housing and the visitor economy. Similarly, I have invested significant time and energy in building relationships with politicians and business leaders in Normandy and Brittany, and as a result, we can expect to see developments in the retail sector and the resurrection of a fish and shellfish export route via Granville, as well as increased freight via the southern route. This year and next, we will see the culmination of the tender process that we have begun, which will ensure we find the best ferry services for Jersey. Working closely with my colleagues in Guernsey, we are testing the market for the first time in more than 20 years to ensure that going forward we have frequent and reliable passenger and lifeline freight services that islanders can be proud of. Sir, Jersey's economy is an ecosystem. And whilst I talk about sectors, there is no doubt in my mind that every sector merges into and supports others. To that end, we are seeing sports, the arts, culture and heritage sectors directly supporting the visitor economy by building an events programme that offers interest and excitement to visitors outside of the summer season. The delivery of the Opera House and the reopening of Elizabeth Castle will provide huge boosts to achieving this aim. This drives greater efficiency and productivity in the sector and helps build greater resilience in our air and sea transport links. I will continue to work with Ports of Jersey to deliver new air routes to Europe and make Jersey a significant player in the Transmanche economic region that links the south of England with the north of France across the Channel Islands. With regard to removing barriers to business, we have already begun work to simplify the hotel and licensing laws, ensuring that Jersey's regulatory regime is fit for the 21st century. In the 2 years left of this assembly, I will work with the Health Minister on creating a regulatory environment that can enhance the nascent medical technology sector that is already emerging in Jersey. It is high-value, low-footprint industries like this that can transform our economy and ensure we are able to meet the demographic challenges that lie ahead. I look forward to working with the Environment and Planning Minister on developing renewable energy technologies that will see Jersey enter the energy export market. In a world that will need increasing amounts of electricity, it makes sense for Jersey to become a small but significant player. Similarly, we will work together to address the challenges in the island's planning system that are in danger of slowing investment in the island. With the Infrastructure Minister and the Connétable of St Helier, I look forward to continuing work on the transformation of the central market and improving the public realm in St Helier. This will bring a new sense of optimism and confidence to islanders, visitors and businesses alike. This year, we will also deliver the digital economy strategy and continue to review arm's-length organisations following the review of Jersey Sport. Sir, this is a précis of the work that I have started alongside officers and my assistant ministers, and I thank the Assembly for its time, and I humbly ask members for their support in continuing the work I have begun as Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. We now move to up to 20 minutes of questions. The first question is from Deputy Scott, Bella Connétable and Deputy Jeune. Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. The Minister said that islands make our economy, which of course they are part of it, but acquiring technology generally involves purchases off island and leads to an outflow of what could be up to millions of pounds. So would the Minister please outline the extent to which he will be looking to his department being more outward looking in order to attract more in the way of inward investment, please?
I'm sorry to be awkward, sir. I could not hear all of that question. If the
could you repeat your question? Deputy?
I'm sorry.
Deputy
Can
Scott?
you hear me better now, sir?
Yes, I think it was just a little bit of background noise, nothing, we almost heard you.
Thank you. The Minister said that islanders make our economy. On the other hand, the investment in technology will involve an outflow of funds from our economy towards those who supply it. So would the Minister please outline his intentions to make his department focus outward in order to attract more inward investment?
I thank the Deputy for her question, and there is no question that the island imports most of its resources at the end of the day, sir, and that includes nowadays human resources as well. There is no question in my mind that we need to see inward investment into the island, and we have already begun work on a new framework we already have a new framework for inward investment in the island. And that will help support both the development of sectors, but also the development of individual businesses as they use technology to enhance their own performance in the economy. There is no specific set amount, sir, of how much you must pay out in order to bring in. But one of the beauties of being one of the beautiful things about being Economic Development Minister, sir, is that it is the innovation of all those private sector organisations, from private businesses through to private charities and social enterprises, that they will make their investment decisions in many ways. They will choose how much they wish to spend on technology, often which will go outside of the island. But we also have a digital economy strategy which will help us develop our own technology sector as well, sir. So there are no set limits and no set numbers around it, sir. But I have no doubt that we will be able to attract inward investment at the same time as buying in technology.
Thank you. Supplementary, Deputy Scott.
Yes, please. And the Minister, having mentioned the need to improve planning, would his department be becoming more proactive in examining planning applications, particularly with respect to the visitor economy outside hotels?
I thank the Minister. That I don't think so. That's quite a supplementary question as opposed to another question, but I'm more than happy to answer it, sir. And there is no, I'm sure the Deputy will be pleased to know that I have already, many months ago, asked all my officers in the local economy section to, and asked the Environment Department to provide all applications, to send all applications our way that affect the economy in any way, sir. Whether that's agricultural land, whether that's hotels, whether that's cafes, shops. If there's a planning application or even offices being turned into housing, if there's any application which has an economic impact, whether positive or negative, I have already asked the department to be getting hold of those and commenting on them. So we do not have a statutory role in most cases, but that I do believe that we should and must continue to feed in more into the planning system, because one of the things I was going to ask the Environment Minister was the last island plan had very little, sir, in the way of economic land provided through the island plan. And that was a big mistake in my view, so, and another reason why I believe we should review the island plan before the end of this Assembly. And, but as a result of that, I had asked my officers to get hold of every application that has an economic impact.
Thank you, Deputy. Conor Tarbus and Brillard.
Thank you, sir. We presently don't have a tourism office in St Helier. Does the candidate intend to reinstate it?
Deputy.
So I'm also pleased to be able to advise the Conor that I have asked Jersey Heritage to work with Visit Jersey on coming up with an alternative location for a tourism office, that being at Jersey Museum. I believe they have held productive talks, and obviously with the season starting in March, April, I would like to see a finalisation of that before then. I haven't been told that those talks have been completed, but they have been entered into in good faith and optimism on both sides.
Supplementary?
Yes, please, sir. The Minister mentioned in his speech working with Ports of Jersey regarding links to Europe. Last year we lost the link with Amsterdam, sir. And whilst the port's efforts might be one thing, we need to make considerable efforts to ensure the numbers are there to make the routes viable. Will the Minister be working with agencies in those other countries, particularly that will feed Schiphol, Amsterdam, to ensure that route is sustainable in the future? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. An excellent question from the Conatub, because I think I have personally taken a great deal of learning from the loss of the Amsterdam route. We both gained it and lost it within a year, pretty much. It was a fantastic opportunity for the island, but there was what I was able to identify as it became clear that the numbers of passengers from the Netherlands to Jersey were not high enough. It was, excuse me, there are people talking, sir, in the Assembly. I can't.
Yes, it's very important that there's silence in the gallery. The gallery or the Assembly, everyone must be heard. Yes.
Thank you, sir. There was, and that was, there, in my opinion, there was not a sufficiently joined up approach between the gaining of that route and then the marketing of that route to the Netherlands side of things. And so for any future European routes, because we won't be getting the Amsterdam route back, sadly, for any future, well, not just European routes, any routes anywhere to the UK or to Europe, I've made it really clear that we need both Ports of Jersey and Visit Jersey to be working very closely together to make sure that when a route is gained, it is sufficiently marketed.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Stern.
Thank you, sir. When the candidate was last asking the Assembly to back him for this role, I asked him about cutting of red tape and the importance of ensuring this does not lead to the rollback of environmental and sustainability standards, health and safety standards, and employees' rights. In his answer, the candidate acknowledged this and that his focus of cutting red tape would be about the way we implement the bureaucracy around regulation. Could the candidate state what specific measures he took in the last 18 months on this issue?
Thank you, sir. As the Deputy will know, I have been working on the Barriers to Business report with Jersey Business, and that was to identify those areas of red tape where businesses felt that they were being stifled by government. And it's very interesting because in most part, it isn't areas such as the types of pesticides or the types of fertilizers that you can't use. It does tend to be in areas such as the speed of the planning process. Again, making the point that it's not the rules that are wrong, it's the way they are implemented, sir. Two areas that we will absolutely be focusing on in the year ahead are the hotel laws and the licensing laws, including events licensing. I think it's really important that they do that. But the Barriers to Business work, sir, was the opening gambit, for want of a better word, in understanding exactly where. Because it's one thing to say red tape. What we needed to know as government is where are businesses experiencing the problems with this red tape, and that work has now been done.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir, and thank you for that. I mean, unfortunately, it took about 18 months to publish this report. But now that the candidate does have that, and I know that the candidate has just mentioned 2 priority areas, but in the next 2 years, what would you like to see the impact on specific areas around that the report highlights by the end of the candidate's term as minister in this term of government?
Thank you. There are probably 2 or 3 areas, not just about red tape. The biggest and the most important aspect of the Barriers to Business report, the biggest problem was staffing. And so there's no question we need, as an island, to gain much more control of the ability to bring people in to staff our businesses in the short term. That's definitely the case. That's putting pressure in all sorts of areas on the island, not having those staff. The other area is, it is in planning, but it is also in licensing, etc. So those will be the areas that I'll focus on in the year ahead.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Kovacs.
Thank you, sir. What has been done since the Deputy is a minister to address the reduction of visitors' accommodation and the sure increase of beds availability?
Deputy.
Thank you. I thank the Deputy. The reduction in visitor accommodation, sadly, doesn't have, I cannot, as an Economic Development Minister, stop a hotelier leaving the business. That's entirely their affair, and that is entirely correct. What we have been doing is encouraging and speaking with hotels who are interested in investing in the island. And the other side is we've developed the visitor economy strategy. Now, it's interesting that people in this very assembly, as well as the media, often criticise the bringing in and the development of strategies. But, sir, through my work in scrutiny and then as Assistant Minister, it was made really clear and very plain to me by the business community across all sectors that what they lacked from government was direction. And that starts with policy direction through strategy making, sir. And that is exactly what we've done. And we've done it most specifically in the visitor economy, where the visitor economy strategy, which was published a month or so ago, sir, was created absolutely in collaboration with the industry. So that strategy, sir, is now available to them. They, as an industry, are able to take confidence that government is backing tourism and backing the visitor economy sector, which is exactly what we're doing. Through that confidence, we expect to be able to help those businesses that are already here, as well as attract new businesses to this island to develop hotels and hotel sites. And so from my perspective, we have done the single most important thing, which is actually give confidence to the sector that the government wants that sector to succeed and has a clear direction for that sector.
Supplementary?
Yes, thank you. So through the visitors economy strategy and also working with Visit Jersey, how do you see they can contribute to this aim of increasing bed availability?
Sorry, how do I see something contribute?
The collaboration with Visit Jersey in increasing availability.
Yes. So I've been incredibly pleased with the work of Visit Jersey, and particularly since the new chief executive was took office, sir, in that role. Visit Jersey, sir, has, in my estimation, not been using the qualities that Jersey offers in quite the way that it has needed to, and I believe in terms of the advertising of the island. And I believe that now Visit Jersey is in a really good shape to market the island in the best way possible to bring visitors to the island across the year. We will still have ups and downs within that year, sir, but we can expect to begin to see more tourists coming here in the shoulder and even the winter months, sir, as Visit Jersey markets the island and has more tools to market the island with, because it is about things such as the arts and culture strategy, the sports strategy, and sporting events and cultural events that will help bring visitors to this island in those months where we will not get sunshine or very much of it, sir.
Are there any more questions for Deputy Morel? Deputy Kovacs, then Deputy Renouf, then the Connaught St Clements. Deputy Kovacs.
Thank you. How does the Minister see is the correct balance between publicly owned and private facilities for sport on the island?
So I don't believe there is specifically a correct balance in terms of 20%, 80%, 60%, 40%. I think it is vital that the public sector provides sporting facilities, because I don't believe that all sporting facilities can be delivered by the private sector from the perspective of they may not always make a profit, that sort of thing. But I do know of at least two different developments or proposed developments in the island around sporting facilities, which are in the hands of the private sector. And should they come to fruition, I think will have a fantastic impact on the island. They are around racket sports and around general sports viewing and conference facilities. So I think, sir, that the private sector has an incredibly important role to play in developing a range of facilities, including sports facilities in the island. I don't believe Jersey should ever be scared of the private sector in that respect, sir, because to be scared of the private sector means that we deny the use of one of the most important tools that this island have, which is the entrepreneurialism of the very islanders that live here, sir.
Supplementary?
Yes. Will he promote a new national stadium for Jersey, and if so, where does he have in mind?
Sir, I've yet to be convinced of the argument for a national stadium in the island, sir. We have Springfield, which I think is a very fine stadium, and I do believe that we need other sporting facilities first. I think multi-purpose in terms of larger projects is quite important. So a large centre indoors, which could hold, let's say, netball tournaments as well as gymnastics tournaments, as well as hold a conference, a business conference, that sort of facility I think would be more important than a stadium, sir. But I am always open to ideas and always open to people coming up, particularly if they're from the private sector, coming up with those ideas, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir, sorry. The deputy, in his statement, said that he felt that there wasn't enough in the island plan, enough focus on economic development land. And I wonder if he could give a little more detail about what he means by that, given that the island plan identifies, has a whole section on the economy, and in particular, for example, highlights 8 different sites for where there is light industrial use, and identifies a further 5 as further options for that kind of use, including, for example, La Colette and other states' land, existing light industrial sites, the use of existing agricultural premises, and so on. So I'm just wondering if he could state where he feels the need is lacking, where he feels the island plan is deficient.
Thank you. I thank the Deputy, sir, and it's, again, an excellent question, because I think there is a problem. The island plan may point to sites, but they are not necessarily sites that are actually specifically available. So when talking about agricultural buildings, well, we have a rural economy strategy which wants to make use of those agricultural buildings. So they're not actually available for light industrial use or storage. Storage is one of the things that many businesses lack. Workshop spaces for both light industrial and also kind of office commercial space in different areas is also lacking. There is no question, sir, and as far as La Colette is concerned, we as a government and as a States Assembly need to understand that there is a large quantity of land at La Colette, which even if it can't be used at the moment because it is being used for other purposes, we need to have a view on, because that is a large area of land that could be put to use for economic use, but at the moment is being used principally as a dumping site, sir, because that is building up the land within it. But we don't seem to have a view on the use of La Colette that enables the use of that land for economic use, for private businesses at least.
Parliamentary. Conor St Clement.
Thank you, sir. Deputy, there is an untapped resource running through all our parishes, and I'm referring, of course, to the derelict greenhouses that exist and have been redundant for many, many years. Do you attach any value to their resurgence, and if so, what would that be?
Deputy.
I thank the Deputy, for, the Conotard, for his question. And I do remember, it must have been about 2019, I do remember saying that we need to make better use of these greenhouse sites. This was in the media, so we need to make better use of these greenhouse sites. It saddens me hugely when I see, overgrown green glasshouse sites which are just not being used, neither for agriculture nor for housing or any other use. I am personally completely open to the use of that land for or at least some of that land for non-agricultural use, if that's what it takes to bring that land back into use. Land is, I've got a really simple principle around this, land is one of Jersey's scarcest resources. If we don't use it efficiently, then we're going to really struggle as an island to keep up and keep going economically. And so I am very open to the use of disused glasshouse sites for non-agricultural use, whether it be housing or economic, if that's the right thing to do for that specific site. And each site does stand on its own and has to be assessed on its own merits, but I absolutely do not have a kind of blanket, do not use them. What is sad is to see the brambles and see the broken glass and see large areas not being used.
Supplementary?
No, thank you, sir.
Deputy Scott, we've only got 20 seconds left. Have you got a very short question?
Sorry, sir.
We'll move on. That brings that period of questions to a close, as there were no other nominations, and as the speech and period of questions has completed, I can confirm that Deputy Morell has been selected for appointment as Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Chief Minister-designate, would you like to make your nomination for the Minister for Treasury and Resources?
Yes, sir. Thank you. And I am pleased to nominate Deputy Elaine Miller for that role, sir. Thank you.
Is the nomination seconded?
Yes, sir.
Are there any other nominations? Deputy Miller.
Thank you, sir. Firstly, I would like to thank the Chief Minister-designate for nominating me for this important role in the Council of Ministers. I have served as Assistant Minister in Treasury with Deputy Gorst since July 2022, so already have some grounding in the challenges facing Treasury and its work. If you support my nomination as Treasury Minister, the priorities and challenges that I see as needing action are these. First and foremost, we need to ensure that we maintain financial stability. That is good for public finances and for our economy. Overall, our finances are in good shape. The ratings agency Standard & Poor's confirmed last week that Jersey's credit rating remains stable at AA-. S&P commented that Jersey has a long history of consensus-driven, long-term and fiscally prudent policymaking. And it's important that we continue that approach. I don't think any of us would argue that we have to respond to the here and now and the challenges that islanders are facing today, but we must do so while keeping an eye on future needs and on the interests of future generations. So, to specific priorities, and in no particular order, as they say. First, to ensure that we comply with international tax standards, we need to implement Pillar 2 taxation by 1st January 2025. Pillar 2 seeks to align minimum global corporate tax rates for the world's largest multinational groups. Implementation includes finalising our strategy and then bringing forward and seeking the Assembly's approval of the necessary legislation over the course of this year. Members will be aware that we've been working on this for some time and keeping a close eye on how other countries are going to approach this. We have already committed to adopting the same approach as Guernsey and the Isle of Man. It's important that we continue to respond positively to global changes. Any tax change brings some risk, but we will retain our commitment to ensuring a competitive business environment, and we will continue to engage with diverse and widespread stakeholders across a broad range of sectors. Once we have the legislation in place, the Treasury team will also have to work on platforms and process for this tax. We must ensure that we provide businesses with administrative certainty and simplicity as this change is implemented. Secondly, we need to finish the work started by earlier assemblies and complete the introduction of independent taxation. The team in Treasury have listened to what members had to say in our debate on this last year. We have developed revised proposals to maintain the principles of independent taxation, but which recognise the concerns of members and islanders about the completion of tax returns. These changes will allow islanders who are married to continue filing a single joint return. After this week, we will restart our programme of briefings for States members to allow you to ask further questions before the debate on the revised legislation. Independent taxation will move Jersey's personal taxation into the modern age, and it's a change that I think most of us recognise is long overdue. Third, we need to decide how we pay for the new hospital. There are a variety of options open to us, from debt to draw down from reserves to a combination of methods. The financial environment now, with increased interest rates and continuing volatility, means that proposals developed in 2021 and 22 no longer work for us. We need to be clear on cost and the best way of meeting it. Of course, it's not just about the hospital. There are a number of other long-term and infrastructure projects to be considered, and I will work with all relevant ministers to ensure that we fund those projects effectively. Fourth, an enhanced focus on customer service. We have, I'm sure, all heard complaints about long waits to speak to someone in Revenue Jersey on the phone. I'm sure we all agree that that's not good enough and that we need to address this issue. It's in the nature of taxation that calls to any tax authority may be more difficult and may take longer to answer than they are in other services, which itself creates queues of impatient customers. We will, however, consider how we can divert more resource to ensure good service to taxpayers who have questions and concerns about their tax affairs. We will also look at how we can spread the load, establishing different deadlines perhaps, so that we are not the cause of our own problems by creating timescales that result in a bulk of inquiries at the same time. Better use of technology and clear communications will also help. Fifth, ensuring value for money and control of public spending. During the election, I spoke often at hustings about the need to get best value for government spending, and I feel strongly about this. Governments do need to spend money, sometimes very large sums of money, and that's part of our role. What matters is that we get the best value from our spending. This is a huge area. The public say they want us to control spending, but they want us to do that without a reduction in services, and it's important to get that right. There isn't an easy answer. It may sound simple to say, well, we can just do without so many consultants. But we need to be clear what we mean by that. If a consultant is anyone who provides services and is not an employee, then it might mean a nurse doing a bank shift, a supply teacher, a person on a temporary contract covering sickness absence, or a specialist software developer working on a new system who won't be needed once the system goes live. We do sometimes need specialist experience, and the most cost-effective way of obtaining that experience and skill may be to contract for it on a short-term basis rather than employing someone who will command a high salary but be unable to use their skills to their full advantage due to lack of day-to-day need. What is important is that the costs are kept under review and that contracts are not allowed to drift long beyond their stated time periods and budgets. Work is already underway to improve control spending. To do that, we need better data on our spending and better management and oversight of contracts. The Department has already reviewed strategy and set priorities. It's important that all government departments participate fully in this, and we may be able to do that by allowing them to keep some of the benefit of savings they may make by managing costs more carefully. We need to look at our purchasing catalogues and framework agreements, and we need to make sure that the social value we ask to be included in contracts is actually delivered in our local economy. We also need to make sure that our suppliers are treated fairly and that there is a greater focus on their experience of government as a customer. The new Connect system is bedding down and moving into a phase of continuous improvement. Once suppliers are using this system, they should be paid within 7 days of their invoice being raised. Part of the role of the Treasury Minister is, of course, about keeping an eye on our reserves and the future, on making sure that we do not spend unwisely. It is also, however, about making sure that when we do spend, we do it well and we achieve positive outcomes and effective delivery of government objectives and policies. I will aim in particular to focus on getting the most of the money we have available. We know that we need a new hospital. We know that our healthcare system will have to provide health and social care to an increasing number of older people in the future. We know that we need more homes and major improvements to our waste infrastructure. And we want to play our role in combating climate change. To deliver on these demands, we need care in our policy making on spending, and we need to control actual spending. We need a rigorous approach to budgeting. We need to be satisfied that the money we are spending will bring the outcomes we want. An obvious example of this is the work that is already underway in health to help us understand our requirements and our vision for future healthcare, which will enable us to plan for future funding, which will be another discussion with the Health Minister in due course. The turnaround team is already making good progress in achieving savings in the health budget. All ministers must understand the need for prudence, control, and appropriate use of funds. We must all ensure that when we spend money, we are achieving policy objectives, and I will work with all ministers to make sure that this happens. Government departments are not alone in this, however. We have a number of state-owned entities and arm's-length organisations. I will aim to work with them to reinvigorate our shareholder and stakeholder relationships, to clarify what we want them to achieve and what our expectations are. Working with all relevant ministers, I will be seeking to ensure that they are delivering in line with government objectives and policies, and that they are doing so in an efficient and cost-effective way. Sir, I'm happy to take questions from members. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. And I'll move to up to 20 minutes of questions. And the first question is from Deputy Ozer.
Thank you, sir. May I congratulate the Minister for her de facto, I think, appointment as Treasury Minister. So the last ministerial elections, the candidate will recall that the Chief Minister Designate proposed an External Relations and Financial Services Minister, but with the same asterisk that we have today, that the actual financial services portfolio is going to move back to the External Relations Minister. And as no other minister has faced questions about financial services, but I hope you'll find it appropriate for me to ask that, does the candidate have any views about this move? Because it's a big move. Is she concerned about it? Is it a done deal? And does she, after, with her wealth of experience having done that job, does she have any observations?
Deputy.
Because of the proposal to move it back with Deputy Gorst, who is amply more than capable of fulfilling that role, I have no concerns, and I would sincerely hope that Deputy Gorst and I have worked very closely over the last 18 months, and I would hope that he will continue to involve me in the financial services arena in some capacity.
Supplementary?
If there was one thing that the Minister was worried about with financial services, because we've had no questions to it, what actually would it be? What's the biggest thing based upon her experience and wanting to work with Deputy Gorst? What would it be in terms of, is it because we're in a big global change, UK access markets, elections across the world, that access to market could be compromised? Is she worried at all?
Sir, I think the Deputy's quite correct that this is a challenging time for financial services. I am confident that with the right support from government, with the right regulatory approach, that it will continue to thrive. I think it is very important to us that we continue that we support financial services as much as we can to thrive in this island. I think if you spoke to financial services themselves, they would tell you that their concerns, I believe, will be about the nature of regulation. It will be about particularly about issues that everybody's facing with staff recruitment and retention, and with competition elsewhere. But I firmly believe that Jersey's strategy, which is to be a well-regulated jurisdiction where good quality money knows it will come here, which will attract good quality money. I think that is the best approach for Jersey, and I think the more we can offer political and financial stability, the more we will, as an Assembly, continue to support that industry into the future.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. Given the need for investment in childcare, is the candidate prepared to prioritise funds towards this area in the next government plan?
Deputy.
Clearly, childcare is an issue. Which I have to confess I haven't read just yet, a report from within the financial services industry, and they have also identified lack of childcare as being an issue to their recruitment of staff and retention of staff in the workplace. It is something clearly we have to consider with all the other demands on government expenditure, but it clearly will serve multiple purposes, both in terms of the health and well-being of children and the health and well-being of our economy as a whole. So, yes, I will be happy to discuss in due course.
Supplementary? Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. Can the government plan was passed just before Christmas. Can the candidate tell us if the new government plans to operate within the government plan framework, or will it be bringing forward a new government plan or amendments to it?
Deputy.
We haven't had that discussion, but I'm not aware that there is a plan to completely overhaul the government plan. It took a long time to get to the one we have. And I think I would imagine that there will be new ministers who may wish to make some tweaks, but I haven't been party to any discussion on the government plan just as yet.
Supplementary?
So I noticed that during several of the nomination statements and answers to questions, money was raised as being desirable from, say, the infrastructure minister and the health minister, who both referenced items where they might want to see more money. What will be your attitude to those requests for more money? What would the candidates?
Everybody always wants more money, don't they? To be fair. I think all demands on government spending have to be considered very carefully. It's quite clear, as I said, the hospital, the new healthcare facilities has to be a priority, and that is not necessarily something that can be found from, it may not be wise to bring that from reserves. We will have to consider how we fund the hospital, how we consider other infrastructure projects, and that will be that really is something that we do need to sit down with the Treasurer and look at the best way of funding. As I say, there are lots of things. We may have to use debt, and debt is not necessarily... we all make debt decisions every single day. Some things, if you wouldn't buy a house cash, you will enter into debt, effectively enter into a debt obligation when you buy a house. Most of us do anyway, possibly when you buy a car. So we have to use debt wisely, we have to use our reserves wisely, we have to be cognisant of the recommendation from the Fiscal Policy Panel that we should be topping up our reserves. So that's a big question, and one which will, I'm sure, will involve hours of debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Chair.
Thank you, sir. The Public Finances Law of 2019 requires the Council of Ministers to take into account the sustainable well-being of current and future generations when they develop the government plan. What concrete steps will the candidate make to embed this requirement into decision-making when deciding how to spend Jersey's public finances?
Deputy.
So I think, as the Deputy points out, it is part of the law, and all ministers must have sustainable well-being of current and future generations in their minds when they are planning their spending. It would be unwise to exhaust a budget completely in a year or two, knowing that in 20 years there will be other people needing support from government. So sustainable well-being is something that all ministers have to take into account. Thank you.
Supplementary.
Yes, please, sir. Part of looking at the sustainable well-being of future generations is focusing on developing a budget that is focused on prevention, focused on developing policies preventing difficulties for people, the economy and the environment before they arise. The Welsh Government, for example, has published a budget improvement plan to help improve the budget process based on the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. Does the candidate believe that there needs to be an improved process on how the budget or government plan in Jersey is created?
Thank you, sir. I haven't seen the Welsh model. I'm very happy to look at it. I think it's good that we look to small jurisdictions as comparators. The government planning process is difficult. It will always be difficult. We are running a country as well as providing services to our local community. Things are always capable of being improved. I will say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. With reference to the Deputy's reference to arm's length reviews and state-owned entities and the intention to look at those relationships, would she envisage that the Controller and Auditor General's recommendations are taken into account, and would she be considering measures to avoid any conflicts of interest in terms of those reviews? So, for example, by taking it outside departments.
I'm not sure I fully understand the question, Deputy, sorry. I'm aware that the CNAG will be looking at state-owned entities, I think, and ALOs in her current plan. Her audit plan will include certainly state-owned entities. That work is important, and I'm not suggesting by any means that it should not continue or that I would seek to interfere with it in any way. CNAG is an independent body and must be given the ability to carry out such reviews as she thinks fit in the manner she thinks fit. My reference to stakeholder relationships is wider than that. It's about sitting down with the boards and making sure that we think they are spending the money wisely, but also it's more than how they spend the money, it's that they are doing what we want them to do. And that they are actually working in line with government policy and objectives and not inadvertently, perhaps, against us. Thank you.
Supplementary.
Yes, please, sir. So how will the Minister look at the value for money in the way that the state-owned entities are conducting themselves?
value for money, as I said earlier, I think, Deputy, comes back to how they spend, what their objectives are. Are they achieving their objectives? Are we satisfied with their objectives? And are they doing so within a budget that we think is acceptable? It's a big subject, and I haven't fully applied my mind to it, but we will be doing so in the Treasury team.
Thank you, Deputy. Colin Thomas-Lawrence.
Thank you, sir. I understood the Social Security Minister designate, when she spoke this morning, to say that she may look favourably on the non-refund of overpaid income support payments. What is the Deputy's view on that, please?
Well, it's my review. She was my report. My response. She was critical of, and I think it is. I think it is quite risky ground. But if she does so, she will be doing so from her own budgets, and she will have to manage those budgets.
Supplementary.
Yes. Does the Deputy see any potential conflict on this around the Council of Ministers table?
Well, it will be a matter for discussion. There are 13 ministers. It will be a matter for discussion. I think the Council of Ministers have to consider that policy. There are very wide issues of policy arising from it, and it will need considerable discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Joseph.
It is, I'm sure the candidate will know, it's a tradition for candidates for Treasury Minister to be asked about their red lines, about which taxes they're going to favour and which ones are absolutely out of the question. Now, seeing the Deputy's just been following on for that very good question about the Social Security, she's been subjected to many tough questions, absolutely fair enough, from Social Security. But now the Social Security is a reform candidate, agreed. There are some red lines. Their manifesto is very different from what I think I've heard her have. Is she going to maintain her position on 20% rate of tax, 5% GST? Has she got any views about the health insurance fund?
That's quite a number of questions there, sir. My initial proposal would not be to change personal tax. Social Security contributions sits with the Social Security Minister and ultimately with this Assembly, and it will be a matter for the Minister, the new Minister of Social Security, to persuade the Assembly that changes need to be made. Social Security contributions are not tax, and they don't sit with Treasury. And the Health Insurance Fund, yes, we know the Health Insurance Fund is beginning to run dry, and I'm sure the Minister will be considering that when she's looked at the actuarial reports in due course.
Supplementary.
Maybe just kindly press the Minister. Is that a red line on 20% tax? Is that actually what she's going to say? Because she's going to be faced with, as we've all heard, a number of challenges. Where's she going to go first in terms of tax increases? Is the 20% sacrosanct under her Treasury ministership?
It's not something, to be honest, I have fully considered, but I do not intend. I'm sorry, Deputy, I haven't considered that amount of detail, but 20% rate of income tax is something that is very important to Jersey, to its competitiveness. And it's not just about the rate of tax, it's about the environment that you create for business, it's the environment you create for people coming to the island. It's about the messages you send about how welcoming Jersey is, whether it's open for business. All of those things have to be taken into account. Scotland has just introduced a new tax rate at £70,000 of 45%. People earning over 120,000 will now be paying 48% tax. And there are people in Scotland who are deeply, deeply concerned about what that will do to attract business into Scotland. Tax changes have to be very, very carefully considered, and I'm certainly not going to launch into anything without very careful consideration. But, I haven't considered red lines because I didn't know that question was going to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Balash.
So, noting the independence of regulation by the Jersey Financial Services Commission is an important prerequisite. Does the candidate agree that such regulation should be conducted within a framework that pays regard to the need for the financial services industry to be competitive and indeed free to innovate, and that the government should ensure the existence of that framework? And will the Minister, if she continues with that responsibility, undertake that role?
I'm not sure whether I will undertake that role, but if Deputy Gorst includes me, then yes, I agree. I'll be very happy to assist. I agree that it's important that we have a regulator that serves Jersey well, that adopts appropriate risk-based regulation. It would be unusual to have a situation where the regulated are entirely happy with the regulator. There will always be, I suspect, a degree of tension between a regulator and the people and businesses it regulates. It's important to get that balance right, but I absolutely agree that government's relationship with both the regulator and with industry are critical to future success, and I would be very happy to support Deputy Gorst in that.
Supplementary? Deputy Brenoff.
Yes, the question about the shareholder representative with the ALOs. I asked earlier about the role of the JDC and Andium in terms of pushing forward developments. And of course, the response, if they are asked to accept a lower return, for example, in order to develop with more public good or in other ways that do not maximize profit, might be, well, we are tied by our requirements to government. What attitude will the candidate take to that kind of debate? Is she prepared to consider greater flexibility in terms of Andium's paying back to the government or JDC's finances in order to further public realm or wider community good in terms of development?
Deputy.
So yes, I think those are all things that we have to consider. We're all clearly agreed we need more homes built, and if government needs to make some accommodation with Andium to allow that, then that's something we have to discuss within the realms of how we fund that. Andium, I think, has been hugely successful in delivering new homes in the island. It appears to me that JDC has not had quite the same success rate, and perhaps a discussion with JDC is needed just to clarify what government's expectation is. And I think that discussion will have to be had. Clearly, cost is a factor for all developers. So the question is, does government say we won't take a dividend, we won't take a cut, or do we just say that if you end up in the position of government actually subsidising the building of homes, then that's another question in terms of funding. But we clearly need to discuss all of these things, and I will be happy, I will keep an open mind.
Supplementary?
Yes, I've only been in politics a short time, but I've already noted a sort of a ritual by which it is common for people to promise to be tougher in government regulation of or government control of the ALOs, but for it not to necessarily transpire. Can she commit to actually taking that role on and being able to report back to the Assembly on what she's been able to do in terms of those discussions with the ALOs in the future? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I will commit to trying to build a closer relationship with the ALOs and make sure that they are that we are satisfied that they are delivering what we want them to do and that they are doing so effectively.
In view of the shortness of time and the very good words the Minister's given to the industry about 20%, is 0 to 10 safe in the Treasury Minister's hands?
Deputy.
So I think the 0 to 10, it's not as simple as 0 to 10, it's 0, 10 and 20. It's slightly more complex than it appears. 0 to 10 has actually served us very well as an island. It has supported our biggest industry, our biggest employer, our biggest taxpayer. Because while the tax take is very important, it is also important that we recognise competitiveness.
Well, thank you, Deputy. And as there were no other nominations, and as the speech and period of questions have expired, I confirm that Deputy Miller has been selected for appointment as Minister for Treasury and Resources. Well, Chief Minister Designate, last and not least, your final nomination for Minister for External Relations.
And thank you, sir. To that end, I'm pleased to propose Deputy Ian Gorst for the position of External Relations Minister. Thank you.
Is the nomination seconded? Are there any other nominations?
Yes, sir. May I nominate Deputy Joseph, please?
And is that nomination seconded?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. In accordance with Standing Order 117.6, I invite candidates to speak and answer questions in order which they were nominated, starting therefore with Deputy Gorst. There'll be 10 minutes of speech and then 20 minutes of questions. And therefore, I invite Deputy Ozef to leave the chamber. Deputy Gorst.
So as members know, post the 2022 election, Deputy Moore asked me to be Treasury Minister. And I found so that I've grown to enjoy the work of Treasury Minister and the work of the Treasury Department. So I want to start by thanking all of those staff who've helped and supported me in that role. But I'm grateful today to be standing as the Chief Minister's nominee for the position of Minister for External Relations. Today, the international outlook looks more complex and uncertain than ever. In troubled times, maintaining Jersey's international reputation as a stable, outward-looking and tolerant island community is of critical importance. The confident, robust and successful representation of the island on the international stage is a cornerstone of Jersey's success, underpinning the jobs and growth that sustain our prosperity and quality of life. We need to stand up for our economy, for our identity and for our values, and this requires experience, knowledge and good international networks. It means delivering on the common policy for external relations by protecting Jersey's core interests and promoting new opportunities for collaboration with international partners across a wide range of shared interests. Whether it is in tackling climate change, addressing labour shortages, promoting cultural and economic links with our neighbours in Normandy and Brittany, none of the challenges we face is purely domestic. I will seek to continue to position the work of the External Relations Department to help my fellow ministers to deliver on their domestic priorities, in balancing change and continuity. I would also like to acknowledge the work of the previous minister and other ministers whose efforts have been considerable. We'll do so by maintaining our building on our key partnerships in the UK, in Europe and around the world, working through multilateral forums and focusing on Jersey's strengths by promoting what we do best as an island and as an economy. We live, of course, in an ever-changing world, and one that is unfortunately more dangerous and less stable. In 2024, we face the human tragedy of wars in Europe and the Middle East. Global politics has changed over the last decade, and this is evidently a more turbulent period. Western democracies are under pressure, and the one certainty is that there will be significant change ahead. As I said last week, there are elections across the UK, across the United States, to the European Parliament and to other European countries. The world will change again before the year is out, and we don't know whether that will be for the better or otherwise. In the current climate, Jersey can benefit from being a reliable and trusted partner, and one where investors can be confident of stability and where we believe in the importance of innovation and international trade. The core of our economy and our ability to pursue global partnerships all rely on the strength of our international standing and confidence in our island. We have a developing network of bilateral tax and investment agreements with countries and markets across the globe, and I will negotiate more of these agreements over the next 2.5 years. I will also help position the island to obtain maximum benefit from participation in the UK's network of free trade agreements covering goods and services. We have played an important part in implementing the UK sanctions regime following Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine and will continue to do so. We have felt the impact of tensions and conflicts across the globe, including through the added pressure they have placed on global trade and the price of commodities. Climate change continues to pose huge threats, and we can only tackle these by working in collaboration with our global partners. There is no role for Jersey in this decade and at this time which involves us hiding away and trying to ignore what is happening around us, even if that is what some might prefer. In a turbulent world, investors will be looking for responsible, stable and trusted markets for investment and for jurisdictions which are clear on the values they protect and promote. That is where Jersey has traditionally and must continue to come into its own. In financial services, we will move forward from the findings of the Moneyval review and continue to implement our strategy for growth, working with the industry to maintain our core strengths and make the most of the new opportunities, including the huge future that exists for sustainable finance. I've also been a long-term advocate for our agriculture and dairy sectors. In conducting my role as Minister for External Relations, I will continue to represent all these industries and stand up for their interests. Being Minister for External Relations requires a rapid assimilation of knowledge and a sound judgment of how to mitigate the risks and challenges we face and how to make the most of the opportunities we seek. The new Minister will need to hit the ground running immediately to meet the pressing demands of a diary that has been on hold now for the best part of a month. I believe that I have the necessary experience to meet that burden, to carry out those engagements and to ensure the continuity of our government's relationships. I believe that I can use my knowledge and experience to help fellow ministers find the right international partners for delivering on their domestic priorities, whether on housing, the future of Ireland healthcare and tackling the cost of living. The role of Minister for External Relations requires a carefully balanced mixture of diplomacy, tact and mettle. It requires the ability to build and sustain relationships at a personal level with political leaders and officials worldwide. The success of those relationships is critical to the success of our island as a whole. I've shown that I will stand up for Jersey against threats or intimidation. I will do so against any challenges to our constitutional autonomy, our economic freedoms, or our right to self-government. As Chief Minister and Minister for External Relations, I have previously worked to ensure that we have access to UK ministers, parliamentarians and officials with real influence on policy that will affect our island. I've made our voice heard in Westminster, in Whitehall, in Downing Street and Brussels. Our relationship with the UK across departments is as strong as it has ever been, and I will build on that, especially with a new government after the UK election. I formed enduring and productive alliances with colleagues in the Crown dependencies and the overseas territories. We will continue to work together effectively where it is in our interests to do so. As well as developing our political, diplomatic and economic ties, I will ensure that we vigorously pursue improved cultural links with global partners, bringing increased value to our community, and that we promote our cultural identity. I recognise the work of the last government, especially the Minister and the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development, in forging even closer relations with our European neighbours, especially in France, and that work must continue. I also recognise the excellent work of the Minister for International Development and the Jersey Overseas Aid, and the need for alignment and cooperation between that work and the Department for External Relations. When I previously did this role, the support of my colleagues on the Council of Ministers was key. You can't do the job without it, and the support of this Assembly was equally key. I need consensus and support from across the Assembly to represent Jersey successfully. I hope that members will agree that I am suited to this role of representing Jersey across the world, and I ask for their support this afternoon. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputy. The first question is from Deputy Balash.
Sir, does the candidate agree that our constitutional relationship with the United Kingdom government requires the UK to consult with Jersey before inserting in a UK bill a clause enabling the extension of that act to Jersey?
It does so, and I think the questioner is driving at, I think it's fair to say, a need to reset that relationship and that understanding. We have seen in a, I think, largely post-Brexit world, an attitude which is unacceptable to us. I have stood up previously to make that clear. I think there are potentially other instances whereby apparently administrative mistake, but I am extremely clear and will continue to be clear. They absolutely are required by our Constitution to seek our approval and only include it once we have agreed to it.
Supplementary?
I thank the candidate for that encouraging reply and would simply ask him whether he is aware whether the Safety of Rwanda Asylum and Immigration Bill led to consultation with the island?
So that is the particular PEC to which I was referring. My understanding is, I've not had this first-hand from UK ministers, one of the first tasks for me will be, if I am supported by the Assembly this afternoon, to clear that very issue up. If it is still there, it ought to be removed. If it was an administrative error on the part of the UK government, it ought to be removed as well.
Deputy Stern.
Thank you, sir. Both the Government of Jersey and Jersey Finance have highlighted the importance of Jersey, becoming a leading sustainable finance centre if we are to retain our appeal to overseas investors. Unfortunately, there has been significant delay from government to move this work forward. When will the candidate bring forward a consultation on a sustainable finance policy roadmap for Jersey? And can the candidate give clarity on the type of policies or regulation he believes is needed to support the finance industry to adapt to the ever-increasing number of new global standards being introduced around sustainable finance?
Deputy.
So it's my understanding that there is that document is ready to be lodged. I've taken a very I've taken a very pragmatic view that what we've seen from some of our competitor jurisdictions is a development of a sustainable product, and that gets people started. It gets something that one can use to market. It's something that one can promote to investors, and they can start using Jersey for a sustainable product. And we've got to do that whilst also agreeing the framework that we will use. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Others have developed frameworks. It's never good for us to do so. And once we've done that, then put in place the appropriate regulation.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. Does the candidate recognise that as part of being a world-class sustainable finance centre that will retain and attract new business, businesses are looking to locate to finance centres that are also decarbonising so that they can meet their own net zero requirements as businesses? Will the candidate ensure that he will advocate for continuing with the targets in the carbon neutral roadmap? First one being, and that's not far away, in fact it's the next election cycle, of reducing Jersey's emissions by 68% by 2030.
So the Deputy is right. Those wishing to use centres like ours are looking for two things. One is that we have sustainable financial products that meet the best practice, and the other is that we are walking the walk. And that is why I've always been a supporter of the carbon neutral roadmap. It was why I was pleased to be the minister responsible for having Paris extended to Jersey as well. It goes hand in hand, and to my mind it will continue to do so.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I was wondering whether the candidate could allude to his views on the UK government and the pressures that have been applied on the Channel Islands and the Isle of Man for a beneficial register of ownership to be in place? Thank you, sir.
Deputy.
So there are sometimes totemic issues which governments from elsewhere have views on. One's first duty is to defend Jersey's position when one thinks that Jersey's position is correct and is a standard that others could accede to. One also has to understand the move of international standards and where the European Union might be going or where the international bodies might be going. And that is why I fully support the statement that was issued by Deputy Moore, together with the other Crown Dependency colleagues, around the quality of Jersey's long-standing register of beneficial ownership, longer than virtually any other place I can think of, that it's vetted, verified and regulated, but also recognising that AML 5 from the European Union, and now going to be 6, does start to change what that standard should be. And that is why I fully support this, the next move, which will be to allow those interested parties to access. But there's still a lot of water to go under the bridge before that is developed and the mechanism with appropriate safeguards has been put in place.
Supplementary? Are there any other questions for Deputy Gorst? Yes, Conatar of St Mary, then Deputy Kovacs. Conatar of St Mary.
Thank you, sir. As the candidate said, he did in the last Assembly, or he was in the last Assembly, both Minister for External Relations and for Financial Services. And from my viewpoint as Chair of the appropriate Scrutiny Committee towards the latter stage, that seemed to be the correct synergy. Does the Minister agree, in fact, that those two roles work well together, if only that he's able to fulfill both on his trips overseas, and does he actually therefore welcome their coming together in his new appointment if it comes to pass?
So I think the Deputy's question, which is slightly the mirror opposite of a question that was put to my colleague sitting in front of me earlier, and there are two schools of thought. And on balance, I come and am aligned with the school of thought of the Conatab of St Mary, that there is such synergy and is such a symbiotic relationship that an external relations minister will have to have when talking on the world stage about the issues that face Jersey and the interests that other people might have. So I do think they work closely together. You could take a much more purist view and say that you don't want the External Relations Minister talking about financial services, so you keep them separate. I think in practice that does not work. My experience is it does not work. One of the things I would really like to do, and I've had conversations with the Minister for International Development, whilst they've got to be kept separate because Jersey should be proud of its aid, which is pure aid, it's not linked to trade in any way, shape or form, and that's how we need to keep it. But I do think that there are also synergies with the work of the External Relations Minister and the International Development Minister, because equally, on the international stage, people want to know, yes, about financial services, but they do want to know about our aid programme. They are interested in Jersey cows. They are interested in financial inclusion. They are interested in environmental projects. So I think working together closely there as well is important.
Supplementary? Deputy Kovacs.
Thank you, sir. What countries the Deputy would want to expand on having closer collaboration with or agreements with in the near future, and in what areas?
Deputy.
The Deputy will be aware that post the election, there was a common policy for external relations which was debated in the Assembly in an in-committee debate. There are a number of suggestions during that debate. I will be coming back to the post of being Minister for External Relations if I'm successful. There are a number of bilateral investment treaties and double taxation arrangements, which I will wish to continue. The reality is any incoming minister would want to refresh the work that looks at the countries that we might wish to engage with. There is a matrix that we go through, much like happens in international development, about rule of law, corruption index, human rights issues, all of those good things. So I would want to, if I am elected this afternoon, refresh that work, and then I'll be able to give the Deputy a fuller answer about whether there's a change in any of those countries or not.
Supplementary?
Yes. What one main thing, collaboration or work that he wasn't able to complete whilst he was External Relations Minister previously and hasn't been continued, he would like to see in place?
That's a good question, sir. I think one of the things that was talked about a lot, and it really aligns with the island identity work, again, that Deputy Levy was leading, was the diaspora. I think that the diaspora project is going to create two things. One is mini ambassadors for Jersey around the globe, where either Jersey people or people with Jersey connections are going to become mini ambassadors for us. But the other, I think, really positive output there is that there is the potential there in that Jersey diaspora to help deal with some of our skills and islanders returning back to Jersey, or people who love Jersey returning back to Jersey as well. So that is something that over the next 2.5 years I would wish to see come to full fruition and make a really positive impact, not only globally but locally as well.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. I would like to thank the Deputy for the work that he's done in relation to the Moneyfowl review, and to wondered whether once that review has been relatively done and dusted, whether he thinks that there's scope to introduce or improve the complaints procedure against the Jersey Financial Services Commission, just bearing in mind the potential for perhaps over-enthusiasm for enforcement against smaller players in the industry?
Deputy.
I thank the Deputy for her question. Some members may have received an email prior to an election last week. It is absolutely right that ministers made difficult decisions. This Assembly introduced changes to legislation to ensure that we can show that we comply with FATF recommendations and the standards that are absolutely necessary. In hindsight, we look back and see some of the way that those changes were implemented, and they could have been done, I think, better. There could have been, in hindsight, more consultation. We've got to learn from that going forward, and we've got to think about coming out of Moneyval. How do we develop a regulator which is truly regulating on a risk-based approach? And that, to me, would be one of my priorities for the Financial Services Commission. I'm not fully cognizant of their complaints process, but I hear what the Deputy is saying, and I think there would be value in working with the regulator on that complaints process if it is falling down, and generally people feel is falling down. But I also remind the Deputy what Deputy Miller said. By the very nature of a regulation and a regulator, there will always be people who feel aggrieved at the actions that have been taken in some instances.
Supplementary, Deputy Scott.
Yes, sir. Please. During the Moneyfowl review, there was a transfer of responsibility to the Chief Minister, and the question has been raised about the improvement of having a minister who is responsible for financial services direct. Would the Deputy be prepared to comment on whether that would be regarded as a positive move within the departments that's responsible for financial services?
I think the first move that the Chief Minister has proposed is the correct one for the reasons that I've just outlined. But as ever, and I know the Chief Minister will, keeping portfolios under review so that the responsibilities of any given minister or sector of the economy is reviewed and is given the oversight and support that it's need is something that I think is a good standard practice, and that, for my mind, shouldn't mean that we couldn't do the same with financial services in due course.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. How will the Minister support fellow ministers to negotiate a special arrangement within the common travel area to enable the continuation and potential extension of the carte d'identité scheme for French nationals once the electronic travel authorisation scheme is in place later this year?
Deputy.
So again, that is something that I would raise with UK ministers. I'm not sure as soon as is practical. The Deputy did what can only be described as a first-class job in pioneering what we now enjoy. I think I said last week that so first-class was that scheme that the UK themselves are now following it, and it is that us showing that we can act responsibly within the framework of protecting our borders, which we've got to remind ourselves is a very controversial theme in Europe, in the Europe in which we are now residing, protecting our borders. So that's got to be at the forefront of our mind. But I think the questioner has shown that we can protect our borders and still be flexible to allow our French neighbours to come and visit us on an extended basis and more than just day visitors. She knows, of course, there's a slight trap in the answer I'm giving, in that it is not the External Relations Minister's job. It is the External Relations Minister's job to support the Home Affairs Minister as she develops that policy and takes it forward, and I'll do exactly that.
Supplementary? Any further questions for Deputy Gorst? Okay, so that brings that session to an end. And I invite Deputy Gorst to leave the chamber and for Deputy Ozer to be brought back to the chamber.
Sir.
Deputy Gardner.
Yeah, I would like to raise the time because usually I'm pretty flexible, but today I have to collect my daughter and it was arranged with 5:30 state sitting. So I assume that members would like to continue, but I probably need to give my apology to leave at 5:30.
Your apology is noted. Thank you. you're ready, Dr. Joseph, you have up to 10 minutes to address the Assembly.
Thank you, sir. And I will relieve members by saying I will not be using my 10 minutes, I don't think. Sir, this new government, which I hope is going to succeed, a unity government, is entering, as all members will know, a 2024 that is a year like no other. Elections in the United Kingdom, elections across the European Union, elections for President of the United States, the rise of extremism, blockading farmers on motorways in Paris, Frankfurt, Brussels, a continuing war in the Ukraine, the horror of war in the Middle East, now expanding in Yemen, now expanding across the Red Sea. I've got no doubt that Deputy Gorse is going to be successful in this election, and I wish him well. However, I've served also as his Treasury Minister. He's been my Assistant External Relations Minister, and I know that he can do both jobs, but I'm not sure that asterisk that the Chief Minister has put forward of splitting it is actually an automatic fait accompli, if I may say. It is subject to an order, and the job that Deputy Gorse has been nominated for is that of external relations, but the asterisk says it's financial services, which is why we had questions about financial services, which is being moved from the Chief Minister's department. So Jersey is but a speck on a global map, but we are an important speck. We're a proud speck, and it is that sometimes we're described as a cork bobbing in the Atlantic Ocean, but the importance of asserting this Assembly's constitutional position is something which I have taken really, really seriously. And that does not mean getting on with just the Conservative Party. It means getting on with all parties. And I doubt that any member of any party would guess that I was a member of any of them, because the Jersey External Relations Minister and Jersey Assembly will get on with whoever the people of the United Kingdom will elect. And I have prided myself in having access to being one phone call away from a shadow minister or minister, and many knows to do that. And I just want to make the point that there is a very, very great risk if we do not continue to assert our international, and as if I may say, Deputy Balash, in his work as the first External Relations Minister, extending and asserting that constitutional independence, that right that we are not to be dictated to by the UK government. Our relationship with the Crown, they are not related to the UK. Red lines such as beneficial ownership registers, which will not be public, they're important. Jersey requires a relationship in a changing world. We're going to see a changed United Kingdom, a United Kingdom that does not know its place in the world yet. It's not got relations with Europe right. We're seeing that with supply chain. There's not been many questions in this question and answer session about the cost of living. The cost of living in Jersey is 1% higher than that of the UK. The UK is higher than the EU. What are we going to do? We have issues in relation to not just our relationships with the UK. It requires, as some other questions have said, creativity, innovation, seizing opportunities. I came up with the idea of fibre in Jersey. I was criticised at the time. I'm actually wanting, whether I'm a backbencher, frontbencher, or the rest of it, I want to see Jersey's digital trade in services agreements grow. I want to see the trade in services, those free trade agreements, which are so vital, and members may have not had the opportunity of asking me questions about them, because, and they don't have to, I'll sit down and shut up in a minute, but basically the free trade agreements that are so vital to our future, they can cut off our market access. They are going to command the attention. They need the time and dedication of a dedicated external relations minister. Being interviewed on French TV, I'm grateful for members' support about that. I wasn't asked one question about being the finance minister, or being a financial services minister, because we again said that we were Jersey. And Jersey's not just about financial services. And what the Chief Minister designate is saying, sorry, the Chief Minister, I'll address him properly, sir. He's saying that basically we're going to have an external relations and financial services minister. And I would very respectfully suggest that it is for this Assembly to decide on that order-making power. It's not a fait accompli. It should be thought about. Because I know that as External Relations Minister, having not been being external relations without being financial services, I've been able to do fantastic things, like working with the former Environment Minister. Have we seen a blockading French fleet of Norman fishermen that are unhappy? No, we haven't. have we had a Home Affairs Minister that's charmed after I did a bit of work in the thing to get ID cards? I said in my original speech to External Relations, I would find a solution to French visitors. And we did. But did that take effort? I was the first minister, I think probably for 24 years, to go to New Jersey, Gateway, where we're actually that bob in the ocean, where that place that is in the time zone, that is perfect between the dollar and the euro, and we've got the pound, and the British pound. And I would respectfully say that the new government, if it's going to solve the recruitment crisis, there's been hardly any questions in this question and answer session about the cost of living crisis. If we're going to secure the jobs and growth of the future, then it needs more external relations and not less, and it should be maintained as a separate ministry. And that's not a bid to say that Deputy Gore should not be it, but it is a signal to say it is this Assembly's decision of whether or not it's put back together, financial services, and I would very respectfully suggest to members that external relations is better without financial services, and you need an external relations minister that's going to be tough enough, qui peut se débrouiller en français si c'est valable, and will be able to speak German or whatever. And just those other skills might be important. And I'll answer any questions. I'm not going to be offended if there's no questions. I hope I've had my opportunity of just saying, and a bit of levity. And if any member wants to ask me a question in the last few minutes of this Assembly, where we will vote a new government which will be a success, and we all want to work together in a united way. So I say this with no malice, but with a positive opportunity of what's possible, because I believe everything's possible in Jersey, but we need to assert our international constitution, and we need to be friends with everybody, and that's a message globally, locally, and in this Assembly too. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy Joseph. Are there any questions for Deputy Joseph? Deputy Balash.
So does the candidate agree that our constitutional relationship with the United Kingdom government requires the UK to consult with Jersey before inserting in a UK bill a provision enabling the extension of that act to Jersey?
I think the Deputy knows the answer to that question. No, 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 it does not. And we should assert that constitutional right. And if I was the External Relations Minister, I would be on a plane, on a telephone, doing that job straight away. And if I haven't done that because of events that happened to me last year, I apologise, but the answer is absolutely yes, and the UK should not dictate, and we should have our red lines.
Any supplementary? Any further questions for Deputy Joseph? There are no further questions. Then that brings that session of questions to an end. And I invite Deputy Gorse to be brought back into the chamber. As both candidates have spoken and answered questions, we now move to the vote. As there were two candidates, the electronic voting system shall be used. Any member wishing to vote for Deputy Gorst should press the pour button. Any member wishing to vote for Deputy Joseph should press the contre button. Members may, of course, abstain in the usual way as they wish by pressing the abstention button. I invite the greffier to open the voting. Greffier, have the members who are online been able to cast their votes? In that case, I ask the greffier to close the voting. That there were 42 votes for Deputy Gorst, 1 vote for Deputy Joseph and 4 abstentions.
Deputy Andrews voted for. And Deputies Doublé, Gardner, Osoph and Waugh abstained.
Therefore announce that Deputy Gorst has been appointed as the Minister for External Relations. And in accordance with Article 19(7) of the States of Jersey law, all ministers have been appointed, and therefore Deputy Farnham is formally appointed Chief Minister. That concludes public business for this meeting.
Sir, before we close,
Yes,
may
of
I just
course.
say a few words?
Yes.
Thank you. So on behalf of the new government, may I place on record a vote of thanks and recognition to the outgoing council and ministers for their work and their commitment to our island over the last 18 months. May I also thank members for appointing today a government which is more inclusive of the Assembly, a government that will foster unity whilst embracing a diversity of opinions to always deliver the very best outcomes for islanders. Thank you, sir.
That concludes public business for this meeting, and I invite the Chair of PPC to propose arrangements for future meetings.
Thank you, sir. The arrangements of public business, our next sitting is on Tuesday, the 6th of February, and there will be some appointments and scrutiny to deal with. I believe that there may be 4 chairs vacancies. So it's Chair PAC, Chair of Corporate Services, Chair of the Economic, Housing and Infrastructure Panel, along with the Chair of Economic and International Affairs Panel. There remain half a dozen propositions listed for debate, but the new Council and Ministers may wish to defer some of this business in order to consider whether it wishes to proceed. So please be aware that we will probably be sitting for 2 days. So I make the proposition.
Thank you. Proposition seconded. Any observations on the proposition made by the Chair of PPC? No. The Assembly is adjourned until 9:30 on the 6th of February.